Thank you very much. You may be seated. Without any waste of time, I would like to call upon our mayor, Councillor Tapelo, to welcome us as our host mayor to our session or our expo, and then we will proceed accordingly with the program. Over to you, our mayor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Program Director Dumelang. Good morning, everyone. Our Premier of Gauteng, Tate Panyaza Lusufi, the MECs that are present here, senior officials, the Chair of Salga Gauteng, Tate Zabati, distinguished guests, Kele Amogela, we welcome you all in the City of Gold. However, there wouldn't be gold in Johannesburg if we are faced with the energy crisis, because we need energy for us to extract gold. So we are committed as the city to ensure that we fight against load shedding and energy crisis. We know that it impacts negatively to the services. There won't be employment opportunities if there isn't energy. Mr. Premier, you know, it affects medium, large, and small enterprises that are also creating employment in our city. So, Mr. Premier, you know, our late Mayor Mpho Moerane had embarked on a strategy to employ the mixed energy for us to have alternatives to energy. So as the city of Johannesburg and me being the mayor of the city, I would also like to continue with that legacy and ensuring we have an intergovernmental relations with the assistance of the Gauteng government and the MEC who is responsible. We welcome you, Premier, to our session. We hope you'll assist us to curb, not only in the city of Johannesburg, but in other metros and municipalities. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you very much, our Executive Mayor of the City of Johannesburg. Let me ask MEC Zikhumalo to really give us a sense why the Premier convened us today. Over to you, MEC.
I am with eGov. They told me that I shouldn't use anything called paper. So I think I'm forgetting even how to write. Thank you very much, Program Director. I just want to get my document. No, I'm not. right, there we are. Thank you very much, Program Director, and accepting that the protocol has been observed, but just a special greeting to the Premier of the province and a special greetings to you all. Just before I came on stage, Premier whispered in my ear and said, "Oh, there's lots of men here." My response to him was that that's the nature of the business. I'm not sure whether I'm right or not. Deputy, MEC for Health, am I right? Thank you very much. So why are we here? We're here because the Premier of the province was concerned about our experiences of the persistent load shedding that has been taking place in the province. And to that extent, the Premier would have established an energy emergency council, a committee that he chairs, and would have requested the COGTA to be the lead department in that regard. The Premier would have made the following observations, which observation propel us to be here today. One, that the load shedding for over the past 5 years grew from 124 hours in 2018 to a whopping 1,949 hours. In other words, our load shedding increased by 69%. The second observation was that load shedding has a devastating effect on the key economic sectors of our country. In this regard, we're talking about manufacturing, hospitality, tourism, mining and agriculture, and small businesses, etc. But also that in terms of the ESCOM report, it was revealed that it will appear that this particular year will not spare us what happened in 2022. Premier would have further made note that the municipalities are negatively affected by load shedding because their revenue plummets, and that to a certain extent they are not able to even pay the electricity that they purchase from ESCOM. But also that load shedding has a negative impact on key delivery services from the province, for instance, with regard to healthcare, education, transportation. These are some of the services that are negatively affected. But also that crime suddenly increases because opportunistic criminal elements are taking advantage of the blackout and therefore affecting negatively critical infrastructure in many of our areas. Particularly if you go to many of our towns, you will see the devastating effect that crime has in this regard. So in response to that, there was a need that we needed to put together the Gauteng energy security strategy. So part of why we're here today, we will be contributing towards the Gauteng energy security as part of our input to the National Development Plan as such. But also are noting that we are an economic hub of this country, and therefore energy plays a critical factor to the growth and retention of the much needed investment, and therefore fighting unemployment and poverty. So your contribution in that regard would be very much important. That this load shedding undermines our effort as government insofar as energy security is concerned, but also it impacts negatively on our GGT 2030 vision. Therefore, our strategic intent goes beyond addressing the current crisis, but it seeks to, as I quote, develop a sustainable energy mix that will reduce our reliance on the national grid. So it's not only about dealing with the crisis as it is, but how else can we get out of the national grid so that we ease the pressure that the country has. Therefore, our overall objective of this expo is to present to you stakeholders our energy crisis response plan and to solicit your buy-in and support thereof. The expo goal also to get better insight from you as stakeholders on what energy plans can be provided to showcase solutions, including technologies that we can employ that can be incorporated in our plan. So in other words, our plan will never be completed until your contribution is such. So therefore, our theme is the following: growing Gauteng together towards a sustainable energy mix. Ladies and gentlemen, that then constitute the purpose of this gathering today, and I hope that it has clarified quite a lot of issues that you may have questions on. Thank you very much, Program Director.
Thank you very much, MEC, for COCTA and EGAF. Forgot to say that you are also responsible for EGAF. Premier, I'm very proud that we're the only province that has got a department that is focusing on E in terms of internet, electronic, innovation, and so forth and so on. Now that MEC has clarified why we're here, but also raised an important aspect on the role of local government, flowing also from what the mayor has indicated. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome the chairperson of the South African Local Government Association to give a perspective from the local government perspective, if you like. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Honorable Premier of Gauteng, Honorable Panyaza Lusufi, the Executive Mayor of the City of Johannesburg, Councillor Thapelo Amat, MECs that are present here today, experts who have been invited into this important expo, including all other interested parties and stakeholders. I wish to also acknowledge the senior officials of government and all the distinguished guests. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I think flowing from what the MEC just said, that we need to grow Gauteng together. We certainly, Premier, cannot realize this growth if we are not addressing the issue of energy. And that is why from the outset, on behalf of the South African Local Government Association in Gauteng and nationally, we are commending your leadership, Premier, and the Gauteng provincial government for undertaking what we view as an important initiative. I am saying this not as praise singing, but I think it is important to give credit where it's due. Premier, we commend with an appreciation that when we are confronted with a challenge, gloom and darkness, the leadership is required. As a SALGA, it is our view that the Energy Crisis Response Expo is just but one of the right steps in trying to mobilize ideas that can contribute in tackling this energy crisis. Once again, Premier and your team, we express our gratitude not only for the invitation to share our perspective as SALGA, but for rising into the occasion in confronting this energy crisis. Earlier this week, the National Executive Committee of SALGA discussed the energy crisis, in particular load shedding, the energy infrastructure, as well as the electricity tariff determination. And out of our discussion, we concluded that there is no doubt that local municipalities are the major casualties of the energy crisis in many folds. Load shedding premium has severely affected municipal revenue due to low consumption and low billing where conventional system is used. This has also propelled a number of electricity users to begin to opt out and consider other sources of energy which are sourced outside the municipalities. Therefore, the real consequence of this option in revenue base for municipalities, making it much more difficult for local municipalities to provide sustainable basic services, which is one of the objects of local government mandate. Worse, municipalities are further struggling to service some of their current obligations, partly because their cash flow are negatively affected by low electricity sales. Furthermore, municipal energy infrastructure is being damaged in the process of load shedding and causing serious disruption in the supply of electricity, both to household as well as business. I can mention, Premier, many consequences which are brought about by this crisis of load shedding into local government sector. Safe to say that load shedding has simply exacerbated the challenges that are faced by local government. As we speak, local government is faced with more risk of spiraling downwards due to the energy crisis. Our SALGA perspective, therefore, Premier, in response to the energy crisis includes, amongst others, but the following. We are of the view that government must prioritize investment towards the optimal energy generation with a view to improve the energy availability, including the upgrade and maintenance of the current coal power station. In this regard, we must normalize the grid. Secondly, SALGA believes that we need to strengthen the distribution infrastructure at local level. In this regard, we are of the view that we must build a resilient distribution network, especially our substations, due to the excessive switching because of load shedding. We also believe that municipalities should be supported through additional grant funding in order to roll out the solar infrastructure, in particular targeting municipal facilities. This, Premier, can be advanced as part of the intervention and exploiting what has been declared as a state of disaster in the energy. It is important that we learn from our past mistakes of not expanding the power stations against the fast-growing population within our urban migration. We are mindful of the discussions around the renewable energy and the just energy transition. However, I must say that it is the view of SALGA that we must focus more rather on our current generation capacity and distribution infrastructure. I am raising this against the backdrop of what I've just stated about the impact of load shedding and the energy crisis in the municipal revenue base. For instance, the city of Ekurhuleni is losing around 1 billion due to load shedding in a quarter. Furthermore, we have received the report, Executive Mayor of COJ, that says that plus minus 400 account holders are anticipating to move out of the city's grid because of the lack of security in the energy supply. Therefore, we can't just allow a situation where municipalities are becoming more and more vulnerable to the loss of electricity income. The ESCOM price increase and the municipal debt may not be the subject matter premier. However, these two have an impact on local government. SALGA is of the view that the recent tariff increase by NERSA cannot be left unchallenged, for they drastically increase the cost of living. They will be detrimental to the local government sector, in particular when it comes to the affordability part. A number of municipalities have been struggling to service ESCOM debts. At the end of October, for instance, the value of the debt owed to ESCOM was reported to be at about 26.4 billion, with 18.9 billion owed by Soweto residents. We are seeing ESCOM is beginning to attach municipal accounts, and recently there is a move to take over even the distribution part. A case in point is the current challenge that is faced by Emfuleni municipality. Municipalities will be collapsed if we don't address the issue of debts. And some tough conversation must ensue on the debt write-off and or consideration of the absorption of these debts by national government. By no means, Premier and the team, are we promoting a culture of non-payment. However, it is our view that a consideration of rebooting in a form of debt write-off and with a strong condition of a culture of paying could be one of the options we must consider as part of our discussions. Municipalities are falling into a trap of budgeting through interest on debts, which is a risky terrain for the sustainability of municipalities. I therefore wish to close by saying it is better to do something even if it's late, Premier. It is therefore important for the Gauteng government to rise to the occasion and lead the pack in normalizing the energy crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dlawachi, the chairperson of SALGA. I would just like to check with the team if there are still people outside before we proceed. Just quickly. I know that, Premier, there would have been a bit of traffic, so just making sure that we proceed. But also, Premier, must... Yeah, no, just settle down anywhere, please. Okay, so we're proceeding, Vuyo. We're fine now. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you allow me, let me call upon Premier Lesufi to speak to us on his thoughts and how he thinks we should work together as the Gauteng City region, the largest economy in the southern region, in response to the current energy crisis. I'm just waiting for you, that side, to sit down there. Premier, over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, our acting DG, Mdumbada. I want to heartily thank all of you for responding positively to our call to end this emergency. But I'm worried about our MEC responsible for this task that is taking e-government too far. Even his speech, he must get an OTP before he can open the speech. I'm very, very worried whether we'll reach the area that he wants to. Let me thank all members of the Executive Council that are here. We are taking this session very serious. And we've brought all members of the Executive Council, and save there are few that have to execute some tasks that we've given to them. We are not here to talk, we're here to do. We are here to collectively request you to assist us. We are not here to narrate the problems of ESCOM and the problems of energy. We are of the strong view that if we bring government and bring all forms of government in terms of local government and all other institutions, and that is why I want to thank the teams that are coming from local government. The new executive mayor of Johannesburg, Tapelo Ahmad, and the leadership of SALGA through their chairperson, Jongizizwe Tlhabati. When you bring local government or the entire government and bring business, bring researchers, bring academics, bring NGOs under one roof, not to talk, but to start a meaningful process to deal with this challenge that we are facing. So I want to thank all our panelists that have agreed to contribute and provide the ideas that you are seeking. I also want to thank those that are coming outside of our country and outside of our province that felt that this is an invitation that they need to honor. We respect your decision and we appreciate that. I'm truly humbled by the overwhelming response that we have provided on this particular matter. And I want to, for now, remove the title of a premier from me and say, I'm a chief buyer. I want to buy ideas. I want to participate in your investment. I need products that will take out of this problem. And I need to do it now, not tomorrow, and not any other time. If we continue to talk, we're not going to solve this problem. We need those that are ready, those that are prepared to put their ideas on the table, and we're ready to engage with you. The entire Executive Council is here. The entire administrative leadership of provincial government is here. We want to hear from you. What is it that you are bringing on the table? What new creative products are you presenting to us? What can we do collectively to resolve this problem? Time to lament, it's over. Time to point fingers, it's over. I can explain why we have this problem. You can better explain why we shouldn't have this problem. What will we have in the ultimate end on the table? Nothing but debates. We want, as this government, to protect our institutions, our health institutions, our schools, our clinics, our ECD centers, but most importantly, those institutions that are at the forefront of rendering services to our people. We need to assist them. We need this institution to have the energy that can be provided. Where we are as the provincial government, we've reached a stage where any form of energy must be brought on the table. Any form of energy must be presented to us. We as a team, we will consider and will have engagement with you. We also want to shield the poorest of the poor. As the chairperson of SAGA explained, majority of our malls in our province have migrated out of the Eskom grid. Many families have migrated out of the Eskom grid, and many institutions are following. What about the poor? Who can afford, who also deserve to be supported? So we are ready to migrate them and provide them with the necessary support within the shortest possible time. If we have ideas, we're here together. We're here to say they must not be left out and they must be given the necessary support. And we need, and we are ready to engage in meaningful discussions. We want to save our municipalities. We also want to save our institutions that are rendering crucial services to our people. But most importantly, we have to protect the economic hub of our country, Gauteng. We don't only have to protect it, we have to ensure that this province pump. We have to ensure that this province create opportunities to many that relies on this province for their livelihoods. Generally, almost 85% of all of us were not born here. We came here looking for something shiny called gold. That gold is gone. We are of the strong view that the new gold is this challenge. This is the gold that we can polish. This is the gold that we can train young people. This is the gold that we can employ thousands and thousands of unemployed people to go and install energy in our communities, in our business, in government institutions. So we want you to showcase your product. We want you to enter into a meaningful partnership with us so that we can be in a position to save our province. We believe into it that those that are investors, those that are bankers that are here in the solution, we don't want a loser. We want a win-win solution. We don't want people that will take advantage of this crisis and overprice us. We want people that are committed to fairness. We want people that are committed in providing a return in investment and maximize doing. We commit as government to take decisive decisions with speed. If we like your product, we will tell you we like your product. Let's go to the next stage. If you don't like your product, we'll also alert you, speedily so, that let's not waste each other's time. We don't like your product, so that we know where we stand when we leave here. We've put up the team outside. All the MECs will be available to engage on any other product. We'll walk around to the stalls. We are searching for a solution, not for a headache. We are searching for something that will make our province a better province. We are searching for committed men and women, businesses, institutions, NGOs, academics that are ready to roll their sleeves, not people that want to waste time and do things that we don't want. We are here to reclaim our future. We are here, instead of dimming the lights, we want to dim darkness. And those that knows my surname, it means dimming myself so that we rekindle the lights of our province. Because together we can do it, please count on this government support. We don't want to waste your time. Products, we need ideas. We are ready to buy and count on our support. I wish you well in our deliberation. Thank you so much.
Premier, thank you very much. The message is very clear. We will indeed, after these meetings, rather the session, create a platform where we will do a sense of pitching, if you like, as Premier was saying, to really get to understand the products. And Premier has also indicated, we can proceed to the next stage in line with our regulatory environment in terms of what the Constitution requires of us, indeed, the Public Finance Management Act. Premier, I did indicate to you that I've got a challenge. It's a good challenge. I've not had it in the longest of time. Is a challenge that I have time. I don't have a problem of time. I have a lot of time in my hands because we were going to then proceed to the next stage of the process of our program, which was going to the exhibitions. We want to humbly request No, thank you very much, Premier, for that anticipating of what I was about to ask. That before we proceed to the next set, I would like to open it up for questions and engagements from the floor on what Premier has indicated. You can still throw in your ideas. If the question is very difficult, I will ask the HOD or the MECs to answer the questions to protect my Premier. Anyone who would like to raise questions? I can see hands already. No, you just raise your hand. You don't have to speak. Raise your hand, then I can see you. Thank you. Thank you, HOD Matilda. So what do we do, Titi? So let me count. This row is 1. I'm giving you a number, then you keep your number. 1, it's a jackpot number you might win. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I've given you a number. No, you just arrive and then you're raising your hand. Settle down first, please. You don't know what is your question. No, settle down. Okay, I've given you numbers. Don't take somebody's number. You won't win if you steal somebody's number. Let's start with number 1. Introduce yourself, where you come from, what are you offering, and what's your question? Over to you, Mama. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Protocol observed. My name is Puseleso Hakofa from Centurion Olivenwood-Bosch. It's a township. I am owning a small business called the Wrong Investments. We have 3 subsectors on our small business. It's on energy supplies, automotive, and building constructions. I would like to ask the HOD on Gauteng Energy Department, how are we going to get access to supply to come with a solution as small businesses? Is there any database whereby us small businesses are going to be captured on the provincial database, specifically on this crisis of energy? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Simple, clear.
Good morning, Honorable Premier, the Mayor, all protocol observed. My name is Sepo Khaudi. I'm from a company called Green Tech Technologies. I want to start to assure first the chairperson of SALGA, worry no more. I will talk something here that talks of a big claim. We have a technology that's very simple, that will empower people, that will make you not to force people to write off anything. We have a lot of waste in this country. a lot of waste in this country, and we can make jobs, we can turn energy, we can have a cheaper transportation system out of our technology. Very, very simple, not complicated. I would love to engage with you, the Premier, and everybody on that. Very simple, but effective, proven technology. Thank you very much.
Right.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Retsatsi. I'm the owner of a company called Lehani Blue. Lehani Blue is pre-approved for 630 megawatts, of which I think that's a substantial contribution if that is to be done. Now, my question is, some people who are supposed to be here, I don't see them. The CEO of NEF, the CEOs of the financial institutions of government to say, we, not as black, I'm not playing a black card. We have to jump I'm addressing this to you leadership so that you know tomorrow when we come and say, we didn't fail, but we were failed by the institutions which were supposed to be here to hear this grievance, which is affecting many black businesses specifically. So I'm here, I'm willing to contribute 550 megawatts, and the 80 will be reserved on batteries, will be released whenever it's required. My company is Lehani Blue. I thank you.
Right. So you are number 4. Okay.
Good morning. All protocols observed. My name is Matata Mpela. I'm the CEO of Nalani Green Solutions. We're a green social enterprise company. What we seek is to build a green economy, starting in this province, that can create 1 million green jobs. How can we do that? We are saying, Premier, by having each school generate at least 1 megawatt, hospitals, clinics, we can achieve that by decentralizing power, decentralizing even agriculture through climate smart agriculture, because we don't necessarily just power, and that power create other jobs as well. And what we are simply saying is that this is an opportunity to also revamp other areas of our economy, especially in agriculture as well. So the power that's also generated at our public institutions at school, for us to put electrical charging stations at those institutions as well, so we can also begin to transform our transportation system. So the amount of sun opportunity, well as clinics, is an opportunity to, as I think at the national level, to just transition our economy here in Gauteng as well. So that's our value proposition to the province. Thank you.
Number 5.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Premier and your team. My name is Mzoli Matiwane. I'm the director of Ebuhlanti Consultant and Projects. So my question is, I don't have a product to help out in the energy crisis, but I might have a service that I can provide. Will you be willing to engage with me? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Number 6.
Good morning. The other products that we're working on is a power wall. We're building power walls using old laptop batteries and other power tools. So we are here to say we are willing to engage and we are looking for the investment. Thank you very much. Representing Straight Light, TMBs.
Okay. So you are number 7. So you can't be 8.
Yeah, no, I just want to.
No, but you can't be 8.
I'm using the mic to take it to number 7.
No, don't use it that way. Don't use it that way.
Okay, sure. Number
Give
7.
it to number 8.
Number 8.
Number 7. Thank you. You are very kind. I want to thank you. Your services are very helpful. Number 13. Done. Whoever deal me and you. Over to you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Chief Bai Lesufi and the senior government for organizing the Expo. My name is Brendan Fernandez, and I am the co-founder of High Power Energy. We are a renewable energy company that provides solar and battery energy storage system as a service to make the renewable energy solutions more affordable for residential and commercial clients. And we are also developing a 200 megawatt IPP project. I just wanted to ask a question from government. How do you plan to procure these solutions from SMMEs and medium enterprises, given that the current tender processes make it very difficult for SMMEs and medium enterprises to compete with companies might have innovative solutions that could actually help with the crisis? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Number 8.
Project this morning. I was in a gym session. I was given 15 minutes to prepare, but I took 5. That's why you can see I'm dressed like this. We come from a company called Tau Power Africa. And what we currently do is offer solar installation. And we also are looking at expanding into assembly. But our question is mainly, okay, I've got 2 questions basically. How are youth owned businesses that are marginalized and seeking to enter into the industry, how are they assisted to basically be given a push into the right direction to participate in the industry? That's number 1. Number 2, we are looking at the Just Transition Framework, which speaks about transitioning of labor from coal technology to renewable energy technology, right? And we're looking at it to be an equitable transition living with disabilities. From SARS, which talks about learnership allowance incentive. Companies that fund learnerships are given rebates from 80,000 to 120,000 rand. But these companies are particularly granted because they offer youth in their industry. An example is if MultiChoice were to be funding internships, they would only be allowed to be refunded if those internships are aligned with MultiChoice's services being broadcast. Another company were to invest in a different industry, they wouldn't get the rebate, right? So what I'd like us to do is perhaps create a committee or a task force that can lobby with the relevant stakeholders, being SARS, MERSITA, EWSITA, QCTO, and the likes, to create a policy that allows any company to invest in internships or learnerships for youth in renewable energy, so that those companies can get rebates for their investment. Because we don't want to rely all the time on the government to fund training and skills development for the youth. We are already in the whole youth development and skills development phase. So we understand the details that allow us to create programs that align youth with the opportunities in the industry. So we are hoping that our leaders and the panelists can assist us in lobbying with SARS to offer tax rebates to companies that fund internships and learnerships in the renewable energy space. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's number 8. So we're going to 9 now. The site, and then we come to, okay.
name is Eugene Sheffers, and I head up a company called AE Solutions. The AE Group spearheads a consortium of companies that functions in the energy space, that is energy security, the food security space, and also it has what I today call a social mandate. Now, I've listened to most of the speakers. Mr. Premier, I'm going to agree with you. The new gold rush of the day is energy. So no more doom and gloom. We need to see that it's a gold rush for us. How do we participate? Chairman of Salga, don't worry about debt, because we can create a social mandate where communities now become self-policing, because we are going to allow them to participate in the new gold rush of the day, and that is energy generation. The question that I have is, as government, your legislative framework, how is that going to accommodate this crisis? Or are we going to be layered with paperwork that's not going to allow us to be able to deliver the generated energy? Because it's clear from all the speakers here that we can generate energy. It is the distribution that becomes an issue. I've heard of aging infrastructure. I've heard of capacity or non-capacity in the ESCOM lines. So we're going to get stuck there. Have you fast-track, have you come up with a solution that will allow us to fast-track our energy? One of the solutions that we're currently using is called direct drive energy, which is what we put into the microgrid for communities. And we then allow them to farm with energy. So instead of purchasing energy, they can now invest into it, become shareholders in a business, and farm with energy. And that goes to mitigate and allow all of us to participate in the energy gold rush. We have a stand outside, and we would welcome all engagement, and we would also at that stage then expose and offer all of our solutions that has been developed over 10 years because we saw this energy crisis coming from, not today, but from 1970 already. So please, don't blame yourselves. Don't say we are the cause of this. It's just a situation that was existing, that was exacerbated over the past many years as everybody tried to come online and on stream. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Number 10. I think we're coming back this side now. The three hands are this side.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, Premier, MECs, and everybody. All protocol observed. I'm Tande in Engineering and CSL Investment. The solutions that we are offering, Honorable Premier, range from short-term to long-term solutions. We are offering short-term that would partners for top energy give in terms of mini grids around or a representative from Salga is here. We do need the municipality infrastructure so that we partner in these things and we work together with the municipalities. That we do also in a way of partnering as a joint venture in these services so that the municipality can also have some revenue sharing in these services. As a medium term, Mozweli offers nuclear, medium to long term, offers pebble technology solutions, which is nuclear-based energy. That's a long term. It's not the unsafe nuclear that we know of. It's a South African-born technology. It has been developed in the country. In the long term, that's base load energy that is clean and green we are offering. In the medium term, we are offering hydrogen solutions
Though that takes you, it's a one-stop shop to say, let's take from short term up to the long term with base load energy that is sustainable. Thank you, Honorable Premier.
Thank you very much, Ma. Say 11, and then at the back, 12.
Good morning, everyone, and all protocols observed. I'm fortunate that Gauteng has helped me to develop green hydrogen and green hydrogen fuel cell for buses. So those who know the Gauteng buses, when they see them on the road, those buses are hydrogen fuel cell ready. You know, we put in diesel for now because there's no charging infrastructure. Thank you to Gauteng for having supported that. Having done that, we've now developed a new technology onto stationary application. Instead of just powering up only the buses with the hydrogen fuel cell, is to power up stationary applications, which is your buildings and various things. But today, we started Siga Energy. Those who know me would know me as Basmark, but today I'm Siga Energy, which is a new company that emanated from this development that is around energy. In the participation in this hydrogen fuel cell and all of that, the investments are long-term. So you don't invest in energy for 2 years or 3 years. You know, you invest for 25 years, 30 years. That's how the turbines work and all of that. In partnership with Siemens and Bosch, we've transformed their Boeing turbines, if you know. The Boeing turbines that people are currently writing it off. We've changed that and made it a gas turbine. A gas turbine that would be hydrogen turbine, which means in a short space of period of time than to say that will take another turbines that can bring us and get us to 2,000 megawatts. Technology. To talk about the investment cycle that is short, we're looking for market access. The problem with the government, and I would say this, it gives 1-year contracts, 2-year contracts. In energy, you can't do that. The contract should start from 10 years, 15 years, because the investment that you do, you cannot be able to pay it in 1 year or 2 years. So we need the government to be able to change the PFMA to make sure that it accommodates these kind of investment cycles, because these investment cycles require more patient capital, and patient capital is not going to come. It is available, but it's not going to come and invest in energy if we are going to only give contracts that are 1 year to 2 years. I'm a participant and I'm a shareholder of Kelvin Power Station, and I'm saying that there we are currently doing 250 megawatt now. We'd like to move it to 1,000 megawatt in gas and in hydrogen. And we are ready. We're struggling with an environmental issue. We've got lots of ash. We can't move there because then they're saying to us, we can't move that ash because it's I forgot the word now, you know. It's hazardous,
Yeah,
you know.
that's the word.
Yes. And that, so we want some relaxation of that so that we can be able to move that ash. That ash would allow us to be able to access another 20 hectares of land, which we can use to connect to the grid. And thank you.
Thank you very much. Number 12.
Greetings, everyone. Have we started the video? Greetings, everyone.
Yes, yes.
Good morning. Good day.
Yes, yes, yes. It is morning.
Yes, sweet. So my name is Andre Tsepo Muller. I stay in Robbie Ridge. I'm the guy from Timbisa. Yeah, we almost, he stays in a different section. I'm in a colored area. As Mr. Henrich, you can see Mr. Panyaza. You know, I wanted to see you directly, you know, Because we all, yeah. Because we saw you on TV, you know. My mom always pointed at you, you know. Yeah, kunjani Panyaza? It's in Sunday, lana. Ngiboni kahle. No, I'm not here to play, man. Eh? How are you, Mr. Panyaza? Mr.
sir.
Premier.
I'm fine, sir.
You're fine.
I suspect so.
Yeah, you suspect. Putum Tala, Premier.
Yeah, there's Premier.
Una manga we. Okay, hi. Putu kunjani nawe?
Yeah, you must ask your question.
Okay. No, my brother, Putum Tala, sorry, I don't want to waste your time because
Okay.
I'm here even now at my township, Rubber Ridge. You
Yeah.
came at Rubber Ridge last, right?
Huh.
But you didn't last long, you ran away. Yeah, you ran away. Angazu saba makala to. So guys, the name of my company, it's called Kyle Solar Investments. Okay. I established it last year on August, but I had worked in solar before with in the company called Invest Solar by Elise. You know Elise with the E, that is
Areas.
yeah, Ellis. I was working with the owner of the company himself, Mr. Ellie. So I used to sell solar with him, you know, but he's late, you know, now he passed on, yeah, yeah, because he was old, obvious. You know? No, guys, don't laugh. You know, he was, yeah, he was late. He was old, and you know, he was just left, you know, with one panyana. You know, but yeah, so Mr. Panyaza, it's really great to be here today. You know, I'm 25 years of age. Yes, turning another, you know, adding another year, you know, this year by July. So, Mr. Panyaza, what I wanted to ask you, as you said, like you wanted to, you're gonna support like also local people, you know, local municipalities. Like also in the townships, you came here at Rabi Reach, obviously. So many people, like they do not afford solar systems, you know. So like, is there a sustainable way whereby people who are not working, there's a lot of people who are unemployed, my brother, you know, people that they don't work. So how can you also support them, you know? I wanted you also, Mr. Panyaza, oh, you're typing the guy. Okay. I wanted you also to support me with my business and fund my business, Mr. Panyaza, because also in Tembisa, I've got how many sections are in Tembisa? 44. It's more than 44, eh?
No, sharp, fed it.
Yeah, so like there's a lot of sorry, mother. So there's a lot of sections in Tembisa. I've got also some few councillors in Rabirich. I've got councillors there in Kanana, in Tembisa. I want to also supply Tembisa. I want to become a distribution company so that people they can purchase from me for their homes and also businesses. You know.
Okay.
Because
Wonderful.
solar
Thank
is the
you.
new electricity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. You can greet the Premier. Was I wrong to think you were the real number 12 there? There. No, there. Eh? Okay. All right, let's do this. Let's give the number. Remember, he was very helpful. Premier, let's really thank number 13. And then what I'll do, I'll hand back to Premier if we respond. Remember, we still have the panels. So let me just do it. Give number 13.
Program Director, thank you for your generosity at the last minute. Premier, the chairperson, the mayor, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. My name is Colin Khari. I come from a company called RS Corp. We are a local IoT-based company, and we innovate solutions in the IoT space. What we have is a suite of multi-pronged products. One of them, I can confidently say here that besides all the other products to be able to help with the energy crisis, we can mitigate for load shedding. And if I can just explain that in short, what we're saying is that we've got a solution that is software-based where we can remotely be able to shield and exempt and isolate certain areas during load shedding period. That could include areas that provide essential services. That includes areas such as the traffic lights to ease the traffic congestions and all that, and that's one of the products. The other product that we have that I can explain also in short is a product that we currently speaking to the insurance companies around, which is basically also to shield load shedding impact and damage on appliances in households, in businesses, and in every form. So it's a device that we actually install in a DB board that actually regulates the voltage of power when load shedding comes back to be able to shield the damage from from the load shedding impact. The other product that we have, and we've been trying to have an audience mainly with SALGA as well as some of the agencies in the city like JRA. The biggest problem that we currently have as well is around the vandalism of infrastructure. We've got a product that actually cable theft, copper theft, where we actually alarm this infrastructure to be able to provide a response anytime that the infrastructure is tampered with. And we would kindly like to have an audience with either one of these agencies to be able to showcase this, because with the load shedding protector that we have, we are able to actually isolate businesses, exempt traffic lights from being affected by load shedding during peak hours, thereby ensuring that there is no disruption, and also allow for ease of traffic during this. So these solutions are available, and we gladly would like to showcase our anti-load shedding solutions given the opportunity. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brother Colin. I would like to hand back to Premier, then we come back for the second opportunity. Premier, over to you. Premier will guide further as to who will also respond to other questions.
Thank you so much, Acting TG. Let me also welcome the new MECs that joined us. Mr. Bass, you are just next to the MEC responsible for environment. So Mbali Shope is there, so she'll be in a position to assist you. And yeah, no, you said you have migrated to energy. I was not aware. I just want to indicate the MECs that are here so that during tea break, you know the MECs that you can talk to, rather than I go on individual questions that were raised, so that if something is related to what you need from us, you can speak to them. MEC Maileze is responsible for bulk infrastructure and all infrastructure-related matters, including housing, human settlement. MEC Maile, so you can speak to MEC Maile if you feel you've got something for his consideration. As the DG has indicated, we've got an emergency cabinet committee that is assigned to this task, so that we can just take decision as speedily as possible. There's someone, I think it's, I can't remember, the name is Eugene, who spoke about the legislation and how quick we came to the position. That is why we welcome the declaration of the disaster by the president. And we have to ensure that we do it correctly. And hopefully, when the Minister of Finance tables this budget on the 22nd, that will also assist us. We've got the MEC that is responsible for the pairs. Is a member of the South African Communist Party. That indicates how strict that the pairs will be. MEC Mamabulo, Jacob Mamabulo. Kulu, ML like half, ML Lafuni. That's the MEC that is responsible for the pairs. We are in the process of establishing what we call a state bank, but it's a financial institution that will ensure that we can get what we want that is in the market. So it's been assigned that task as well, to ensure that we establish a state bank or a provincial bank that will fast track our decision making in terms of funding projects. In terms of protection, we have MEC Faith Mazibugo. MEC Mazibugo, if you can stand up. I think Colin Khare, I know the mic will not pass. Is it? The MEC is responsible for protecting our infrastructure, Colin, to stop vandalism and all other related matters, and to ensure that the province is safe. So when the mic was passing you, I knew it wouldn't pass. You know, a former radio person will not allow the mic to just pass. But thanks, Colin. We also have the MEC responsible for education and youth development. Tsepo, Tsepo. Yes. The MEC responsible for supporting youth programs. Matume Chilwani, Matume is responsible for education and youth programs. No, I love. Auxiliary, it's sharp. And when I first started, I would speak say one, so kulumara, just say we takas. So the MEC is responsible for education and youth development. So we've got a program that we call TEPA 1 million. They've changed it to Youth Plug just to migrate to youth language and youth vocab. So it just assists young people who have business ideas that need support, that need all form of assistance from government. So he's responsible for that. We also have the Chief Whip. Chief Whip, if you can stand, please. Chief Whip is following up on all our decisions to ensure that they are implemented and providing oversight on everything that we are doing. And thanks for coming, Chief Whip. We're the MEC responsible for economic development. I'm not sure if I was going to the bathroom. So all in terms of products, in terms of ensuring that we grow the economy of the province. She's responsible for that, and we also have departments that are working, or agencies that are working under her. We also have the MEC responsible for, if you can come, she spoke, those that arrived late, is responsible for COCTA, that's the relationship between local government and provincial government and national government, but it's also responsible for e-government, just to digitalize government in our province. So we are all here. We don't want to disrupt the program here. So we want the DG to continue. We've noted the areas where people have asked questions. Majority are value proposition. This is what we have. So we'll have the right moment to deal with those issues. As the DG said, we have the laws and processes that we need to undertake, but we want to frustrate them so that we don't delay. Also have Mbali Hlope. Mbali Hlope, she's responsible for two big departments. She's responsible for environment, environment and agriculture, which that's the one that I wanted, which is key, but is also the key person for protection of the weak and the vulnerable through social development. So whatever that will protect the poor. We are there. Good people, you don't know how excited we are to host you. And we want this process to be meaningful. We don't want to waste each other's time. We've invited people that are knowledgeable. So we want you to listen to them as well. And we also want you to question them. And we also want to learn so that the things that we've raised, like the one that has been raised about the procurement period, that the 1-2 years are not working, 3 years are not working. We need 10 years and other things. So we're willing to learn as well. Please if there's something that I honestly and politely request you to know, we have no time. We have to move with speed. We have the responsibility as the people that I've introduced just to lead this government for the next 12 months. We have to make an impact. We have to make a tangible impact that our people can see. Talking will not bring anything. Actually, our people are tired of talking and ideas. We need to migrate and convert our province into a construction site and ensure that we move with speed, but obviously within the law and within the requirements of our pace and within the limit of our pace. I went through the attendance register and people that have made reservations to be here. We literally have everyone across all sectors. So it's not about exchanging ideas with us, but it's about exchanging ideas within ourselves as well. Some of the issues and questions people have been raising, there are people here that have got answers. There are people that can provide the necessary financial assistance and the necessary support. So I don't want to disrupt the program. Let's allow the program to flow. But I want to thank the chairperson of local government, Salga. Thank you so much. I know you literally put aside some of the responsibilities to join us. So I want to thank you and wish you well in resolving problems of Ekurhuleni. She's the acting chief whip of that municipality. Mr. Mayor of Johannesburg, I know how committed you are. And thank you for agreeing that we're going to utilize city power as an instrument for the province. Migrate it from a local authority, be an instrument that can assist us in the province. And there were some ideas that people are speaking about how we can utilize city power, and the municipality is ready. And thank you so much, Mayor. Yeah, you can't believe, since I became a premier of this province, the first time that I interact with an executive mayor of a metro. All executive mayors were boycotting us. Yeah, but thank you so much. Truly appreciate that. And thanks. This is our implementing MEC. Is responsible for COCTA, so all the ideas are consolidated through his office, and we'll deal with things. The HODs are here as well. I'm not sure HODs, I won't mention your name. If you can stand up so that they know the administrative people that I have. Cyril and other HODs that are here, please stand up, please. These are our HODs. Just feel free as well to interact with them if you want to. Thanks, HODs. Truly appreciate that, and thanks for everything. I wish you a rewarding experience. Please be with us. We are with you. We invited you, and we'll be with you until the end. Enjoy the sessions. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Premier. As you lead your panel back to your seats. So what I'm going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is that we call the first panel, as I also call Gugu, to help me. Let me call Dr. Brian Muntlana from CSIR. Also call upon Ntlai Musia from Autonomy Capital, and then call Mr. Mohan Vivkanondan from the Development Bank of Southern Africa, and Ms. Hussein Muleshe from RUP, and Mr. Cyprian Muloto from Infrastructure Solutions. Please come on stage. We quickly do the panel, the first panel. As Premier said, we really want to get as much ideas as possible And then after this panel, we can then go for tea. And then the premier will be going through the exhibitions. Is Gugu here? Where's Gugu? Is she here? Yes? Oh, okay. Where's Gugu? Yeah, she must come. I'm giving her a job. What? Eh? Oh, okay, colleagues, it's not tea break yet. Please settle down. You see, Premier, I want to make him number one and he's going now. You are number one, remember. So don't go, don't go. Oh, great, great. Over to you, my dear sister.
Morning, morning. How are you? Very well, thank you. Lovely to meet you. Sorry, you say, lovely to meet you. Sit there. A very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Oh boy, we need to try that again. We cannot be at a Gauteng Energy Expo and not display energy, right? Which we know is the fundamental topic that we will be discussing here today. So once again, a very good morning to each and every one of you, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we'll accept that one. There we go. There's some energy. Thank you so much for your patience and participation throughout the course of this morning. And as has been discussed by our various leaders, we certainly are on a new trajectory as the province of Gauteng. Well aware of the energy concerns that we face at a national level, and of course, how they speak to the economic hub and the activities that we require within our province. And most importantly, we are here to engage. It's a new journey that we are all on, and as one of our colleagues mentioned earlier, this is a new gold rush, perhaps. And just as we saw many, many moons ago, where everyone applied their might, their intellect, and their support and resources, this is where we too need to pull together to make sure that we are able to see the necessary outcomes that we require in order to meet the energy demands of our province. So as we look forward to engaging in the second half of the program, I do want to enlighten you to the fact that we'll have several panel discussions with various industry leaders representing the financial services sector, the technical aspect of things when it comes to ensuring that we have sustainable electricity supply. And most importantly, because this speaks to local government, we need to ensure that it is sustainable for the long term. So we will reflect on some of these topics and themes through the various panel discussions that we have. Naturally, we'll also afford you the opportunity to ask questions to some of our panelists here today. In as much as we appreciate the comedic humor and the jokes and the lightheartedness, we also do ask that we keep our questions concise, succinct, and of course to the point, directing them to a specific speaker on the panel, just to ensure that we can get through as many questions as possible and ensuring that our answers do have the necessary depth that you require in the response. So on that note, I do understand that there will be some moving around as we do settle in. A reminder that some of the content for today is being streamed live. So to any of you who might stand up in front of cameras, please do be cognizant of the fact that we do have international and local participants who are not joining us here presently, but are watching virtually. So on that note, I guess just before we do get the panel discussion going, and of course hear from not only our moderator, our opening speaker, and the panelists themselves, perhaps by show of hands, to make sure that we have all the right stakeholders in the room, if we can actually identify who we're speaking to. I do see some of the government officials who are present here with us today, but I did hear a number of you saying that you own your companies. You've started businesses in light of the response that we'd like to have to the energy crisis in South Africa. So all the entrepreneurs, if you could raise your hands so that we know where you are and who we're speaking to. Entrepreneurs primarily within the renewable energy space, supply chain environment, entrepreneurs offering services. Okay, I see your hand is still up. Any particular players within the regulation space who might be here that we can also speak to? Regulators. I see a hand up there. Regulators. Of course, we know that we have the resources, but money talks. So any financiers who are also in the room, if you could raise your hands. A few of you. You're seated in the dark, which isn't very comforting. But great to see that you are all present here today, as well as a significant contingent of entrepreneurs who are here. Ultimately, that helps us understand that the solutions are in this room. So that is what I'd like to encourage you to walk away with as we do look to commence with our panel discussion, as well as the conversations that we'll hear in just a moment. I would like to believe that all my guests are comfortable and of course are ready just before we commence with the panel discussion. As they do continue to settle in, we will hear the opening remarks that will set the tone for this first panel discussion. This one is all about the money bags, the financing solutions that we look to see from a myriad of leaders who have been in this role and realm before. Development finance institutions, we've got private bankers who are present here with us on stage, as well as consultants who have often played the important role of mediating between these particular relationships. So to those of you as entrepreneurs who might still seek some funding, this is the conversation that you want to listen to. But before we get into it and I introduce some of the speakers as well as the moderators who will be participating, I'd like to start off by inviting a special guest to set the scene. This guest today will give us some insight into, of course, the stakeholder input on the Gauteng government's strategic choice to reduce reliance on the national grid. Our speaker today, ladies and gentlemen, will provide you with a brief overview and insight as to why today matters. A clear understanding as to why today matters, and of course, assist us in setting the tone for the rest of the conversations we have. Please warmly welcome to the front of the stage, Dr. Brian Munklana, who's the Presidential Climate Commissioner and Council for Industrial and Scientific Research. To set the scene, following that, I will move into introducing our panelists as well as the moderator for this panel, who then engage in conversation for about 40 minutes or so. But for the moment, please warmly welcome Dr. Brian Munklana to give us the opening remarks.
I have to adjust the height. Good morning, everyone. All protocol observed. My name is Brian Mantlana. I'm from the CSIR, which is the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. I had asked for my presentation to be loaded. I'm not sure if it is being loaded. If not, I can run it from my computer. I was told that it's being loaded. So as I said, I come from the CSIR, and at the CSIR, I lead the work of climate change. I lead a team of 44 researchers. We look at we do climate projections. We also do climate policy, both at global, at national, and also at local level. But this presentation, I put it together more or less wearing the hat of being part of the Presidential Climate Change Commission, which is led by Mr. Vali Musa and Dr. Crispian Olver. But where is it? Where is the presentation?
Okay, I guess our technical team will support us in the meantime. If not, we're happy to listen through the presentation, and as soon as it's ready, we'll pop up with the support of the technical team. You comfortable?
I'm fine to present without it. My dad is a preacher, so I can borrow from that. Firstly, I want to thank the organizers for the invitation. I am very humbled by the invitation that we as the CSR have been asked to talk about energy in this very important setting. I want to start, I've been given 15 minutes, and I want to use only 12 of those minutes. So I'm gonna run through, and I had prepared 20 slides and wanted to run 20 slides in 12 minutes. So I'm going to run through these issues a little bit slower now that you cannot see them. Oh, now you can see them, fine. Where do I press? Okay, sure, beautiful. I thought it's important to first provide the context within which this energy transition in South Africa is happening. We had some of the feedback and inputs both from the political panelists and also from the people in the audience, that what is clear is that there is an energy transition happening in South Africa. That brings in a lot of questions, but I want us to start at the beginning and understand the context and remind ourselves of the context. And here, Premier, it's not about complaining, it's about setting the scene. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to lift up the conversation a little bit and provide it at national level. And I trust that the panelists will bring it down to the local government level. So we know South Africa, mostly of us here are South Africans, we've got high levels of poverty. We've got high levels of unemployment. We're dealing with inequality. What's important for today's conversation is that we have one of the most carbon-intensive economies in the world. That's material. Bear that in mind because it's going to come up as a very important component of this conversation. We need to grow our economy. We have challenges with our electricity supply. And I want to remind you of this point that we have vulnerabilities to climate risks. And there's a very strong link between the energy conversation and the climate conversation. I am aware that today we are talking about the climate conversation and rather about the energy conversation, but I work in a space where I combine these two features of life. Here I'm showing an illustration of how carbon intensive our economy is. As I said earlier, it is one of the most carbon intensive economies in the world. Now, in the area where you work, you may think this is immaterial, but it affects directly how we trade with our international partners. And we're talking about Johannesburg here. Johannesburg is a major city in the continent. It has huge trade partnerships with Europe. And currently, the European Union, for example, is considering what is called carbon border adjustment measures. Talk with me in the corridors about what that is, and I can unpack it for you. But that has material implications in how we trade with our global partners. That said, the other reality is that this energy transition provides opportunities for the country. And one of them is that the demand for minerals in this energy transition is going to increase. A study by the World Energy Outlook shows that by 2030, the demand for critical minerals for clean energy technologies in 7 years' time. So this energy transition that we are talking about here is requiring mineral supply. Again, let us not only think about energy and be sectoral in our thinking when we are thinking about this, this transition we are in. Rather, let's think in what is called circular economy. Most of you will be familiar with that term. Copper use will see the largest increase in terms of absolute volumes in the near term. But I want to caution also that whilst this is an opportunity, we already at this stage of this energy transition need to start thinking about waste management. The materials that we're going to use to drive this transition have a lifespan. What do we do with them post that lifespan? And we must start thinking about that now so that we are ready to deal with the waste and not be caught unawares or not ready when it's time to deal with the life cycle that, of these materials that are going to drive this transition. Green hydrogen. I'm in the presidential climate change and there are shades of views about green hydrogen amongst us. I'm not going to go into that. I'm at CSIR by employment, and we are strong advocates of green hydrogen. We are strong advocates of gas as one of the key sources that can help the current energy crisis. So this slide is not, by this slide at least, I'm not representing the commission, I'm representing my employer. In that, I think, and we believe that South Africa has a competitive advantage for green hydrogen industry. We believe that green hydrogen is future energy carrier of choice for local demand and exports. Oh, sorry. Which side do I press? Which direction do I press? There we go. There we go. But how does it work? Yeah, no. Okay, I think I've got the hang of it. So the other point that I want to make is one of the aspects of this transition that we're in is the issue of choice. We do not have much time to make these choices. It's almost as if we have to paint the aeroplane while it's flying. But there are key pillars that we need to keep in mind. One of them, the issue is that we do not have a dilemma of issues to address, but a trilemma of issues to address. One is energy security, which is the core conversation we're having today. The other one is energy equity, which is about ensuring access. This is also another material issue in South Africa, the issue of access to energy. The issue of poverty, of energy poverty, is the material issue that in this energy transition we have to address. And then environmental sustainability. And the challenge is, how do we balance these three? We are lucky in South Africa that we have a number of products we can draw from. We have studies that have been done by various institutions, and all of them, they come to the same or similar conclusion that across this trilemma of categories, renewables are considered better, or if they are not better, they are even compared to the conventional or traditional systems. If you look at the graph, at the slide that I'm trying to display there, we're looking at environmental variables, key energy equity variables, and key energy security variables. I want to draw your attention where there are question marks is that issue of access, fair distribution of benefits and costs. In my view, us as researchers, we need to put more effort there to provide more clarity of how do we better improve, ensure that there will be access for everyone. We leave no one behind in this energy transition. There is, however, a short-term energy crisis that needs to be urgently addressed. And in our view, as the Presidential Climate Commission, is that short-term energy solution will also be renewables-based. So what are the principles of engagement? One is that short-term solutions cannot compromise long-term climate change outcomes. So whatever works today, it must not lead to positioning South Africa adversely in terms of responding to climate change. And if we are to deviate from those objectives that are climate change sensitive, we must provide data-driven justification. In South Africa, the conversation about energy is robust at best. There are different views of how to get to the solutions, and that's healthy. Here I'm showing just a few slides of different views that have been expressed in public. I'm not going to go to them about their merits. I just want to show that at the same time, academia is providing responses to this conversation. And what is important, I think, as activists, as role players, as society, as political leadership, this slide is important. We must be cautious of misinformation. So check your sources of information so that you are not drawn into thinking that, for example, the North is going back to coal, and that going back to coal is driven by the failure of renewables. That is purely inaccurate. Secondly, as we engage in this setup, as we engage in this conversation about energy transition, we must check our assumptions. We spend our time doing modeling. So we model the future. And models are driven by assumptions. And it's important to know what assumptions drive these models, because Nina, you see the front end of what comes out of those models. But you must interrogate and ask us, Ukuti, what did we put in to get what we are showing you? So we must be careful about how we message issues that are important, like the energy availability factor, which is a key policy informer of how we move forward. I think the point on this side of the slide is important also. We came up with the IRP in 2019 as South African government. I want to remind you that some of the assumptions that we made at that time, only 3 years ago in 2019, 4 years ago in 2019, some of those assumptions have changed materially. Therefore, it may be time to go back to the IRP and update it. I've got 4 more slides to go. Now, the issue is, what do we do? So the package is there. Eskom is involved it's a basket of options. And we know that we've had it already in the players here in the room. And we must keep that in mind, that at this stage, there is nothing that we are throwing away. So there must be considered direction of travel, but leaving no option of energy source behind. There's a lot of writing in this slide. I do not like slides. I told you that my dad was a preacher, so he just talks. And I learned to listen from a young age. But I want to draw you to the part that is highlighted in bold, the issue of batteries. The issue of batteries, Premier, is an issue that we need to take seriously as a part of our response in energy transition. I can talk more about it. At CSIR, we invest millions of rands annually in doing research on this. But all I want to leave with you now is that let's think about how battery storage plays a part in this energy transition. You want to tell me that at this stage I have not managed to work this out? So then, as a researcher, we keep asking, we spend our lives asking questions instead of providing answers. So I had to come up with a question: how do we simultaneously and urgently invest in long-term improvement of the grid, allowing future access of renewables? So how do we balance the urgency of what needs to happen today, knowing that there's great inertia when it comes to the introduction of renewables into the system? We have various ways of answering that question, and I'm not going to go into that. This is my third last slide. The message I want to share with you is the message that says energy efficiency and demand side management, in our view, as the Presidential Climate Commission and as the CSIR, is that it provides short-term wins. All of the modeling that has been done to date, it assumes aggressive energy efficiency targets are met. So it assumes that the energy efficiency targets that are there in the strategy that the MRE set, they are met. What if those energy efficiency targets are not met? Most of you are aware that there is a Just Energy Transition Implementation Plan that is being implemented currently. which is covering renewable energy, is covering electric vehicles, hydrogen, and skills. In the context of today's conversation, what I want to share with you is that part of that allocation of that just energy transition is, what's the right English word? I don't want to say ring fenced, I don't want to say allocated, but will be considered for municipalities. And therein is an opportunity for local government to tap into this process. So in conclusion, there's a huge drive on energy efficiency. Batteries will play a big role in the transition that we are in. And, and secondly, there needs to be investment in grid upgrades to support the continuing addition of renewable generation. How do we do that? There are many options of how to do that. Perhaps the panelists may help in contributing to that. All I'm doing here is to provide a skeleton. Hopefully they will provide the flesh to these aspects. The third point is about the role of municipalities. How do we support municipalities to be active role players in this just transition? There are many ways to do this, but what are the most cost-effective ways to ensure that the issue of access is addressed? We rely on local government to ensure that the just energy transition is just. How do we translate that just component to practicality? If you meet me in the corridors, talk with me. We have views in the Presidential Climate Commission on how to do that. Then ensure measures are implemented to support those impacted by load shedding. Now, English is a beautiful language in closing. We were careful in choosing those words there. Ensure measures are implemented. As the Premier was saying, we are past the talking stage. Yes, the planning has to happen, but in parallel with the planning, there has to be implementation. And I'm going to leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mondlana, for that presentation and, of course, giving us a quick overview as to what it is that we can anticipate for today. We are going to move into the panel discussion and, of course, recognize that the Premier is back to absorb some of the themes that we will be discussing today. For the benefit, though, of our audience and to ensure that everyone is able to see and hear clearly, I'm going to request the assistance of my colleagues for a second as we commence with the panel discussion to move this flag to the side, please, just to ensure that we don't inhibit the view of one of our speakers here. Perhaps if we could also take the lectern with us, just towards the side. No, the flag is fine. The lectern as well might be in the way. Thank you kindly. I'm loving that the theme of collaborative efforts is clearly proving to be true so far today. Everything from the slide presentation to moving around some furniture and making sure that our respective speakers will be able to make their way onto stage. So thank you very much. So as we have mentioned, we are moving into the panel discussion for a moment. And as has been discussed, this is all about money. Well, financing of energy projects. And as we would know, when it comes to infrastructure development, these are long lead times, long-term investments that also are very clear in terms of calculating any risk that might exist, but clear in the essence of ensuring that there's also a socio-economic benefit to the environment that we serve, especially in a world and a climate where ESG has become so much more of a key theme for us to be mindful of. So as we're going to unpack this particular theme, I'm going to introduce the panelists and of course the moderator who will be leading this conversation, but I will only be introducing them according to their names and titles. I do believe that we will hear from them very briefly as well. We'll give you 2 minutes, or actually a minute, to fully give us a synopsis of the institution that you represent, the kind of role and function that you play within the energy financing space, and how your role here today will hopefully lead to some solutions that speak to the stakeholders in the room. We're comfortable? Fantastic. Well, let me start with the first speaker too, or rather the moderator of the conversation, which will be Mr. Nkai Musia, who is in the center and will be directing this particular conversation. He's Executive Director at Autonomy Capital. We also have, starting to my left-hand side, Mohan Vivekanandan, who joins us from the Development Bank of Southern Africa. As we've heard from our initial speaker, Dr. Brian Monklana, who'll join us, I guess, for this panel discussion, just to add some detail, but he's looking at me saying, no, Kuku. So we'll allow you to be excused for a moment, but I do believe that there might be questions from our audience, and if at any point they do come up, we're happy to direct them to you. So you'd be comfortable with that, sir? 100%, fantastic. Further to my left-hand side, we have Huse. We have our guest, Ms. Huse Muleshe, who joins us as the Managing Director of RUBK. And of course, towards the end, Mr. Cyprian Moloto, who joins us as Infrastructure Sector Solutions Transactor at Rand Merchant Bank. As you can tell, wide representation of individuals who have more than 2 decades of experience within the financial services space, both from a DFI point of view, including commercial banks, and of course, even having transitioned in a space where they actually consult and assist with many of these particular themes that speak to the funding and financing of energy projects. Mohan, I'd like to start with you. We'll literally give you 30 seconds, just so that we have a clearer understanding of who you all are in this array, the role and function that you serve at the DBSA, and why it's important to the energy conversation we're having today.
Great. Morning, everyone. Thanks again for inviting myself and DBSA to participate. My name is Mohan Vivekanandan. I'm the Group Executive for Origination and Coverage at the Development Bank of Southern Africa. And the DBSA, we're a national development finance institution based here in Gauteng and Midrand. And our mandate is to finance and develop sustainable infrastructure projects in both here in South Africa and the rest of the African continent. And these 2 sectors, municipal financing and the energy sectors, are 2 leading sectors that we participate in. We do in the range of about 13 to 14 billion rands worth of financing every year.
Yep.
And we also provide not just financing, but we also work in the earliest stages, which is difficult for commercial entities to do, meaning we fund the financing of feasibility studies to get projects to a position where they can be banked both by ourselves and our commercial banking partners as well.
100%. Thank you so much for that, Mohan. If we can move it on to Dr. Mr. Nkai to join us and give us some background into his role and function of your entity, and of course the important role that you play within the energy space.
Thank you so very much, Gugu. My name is Nkai Musia. I'm a director at Autonomy, like you mentioned, a Pan-African infrastructure and energy advisory firm. Spent 15 years with Standard Bank in the infrastructure and energy space. And our role really, and the reason that I'm here, is to reflect on the experience that we've had in making bank projects fundable. And drawing on some experience that we've had with major initiatives in South Africa, like the Renewable Energy Program. And that's what I hope to bring to this conference. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. Huse.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Huse Muleshe. I'm a managing director for Rubik, which is a company that does advisory and consulting work in the energy space. I have 24 years of experience in the energy and infrastructure space across various sectors, including government, from a planning and policy position point of view. I've worked for development finance institutions like the DBSA and the IDC. I've worked for Standard Bank and some construction companies. Here today, I think that the contribution that we can make is that we have seen a number of projects that struggle with attracting funding based on various constraints. You find that the developers of projects and the funders of projects do not meet each other, do not speak the same language. So I think we start to talk about what are the interventions that can be made to make sure that we address these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Cyprian?
Morning, everyone. Is it working?
Yeah.
Morning, everyone. I'm Cyprian Moloto. I'm an investment banking professional in the sort of infrastructure and energy solution space in Rand Merchant Bank. I've been in the industry in banking for circa 10 years. And I think what is critical in the conversation that we're going to have today, and what I'm hoping that I also bring to the table along with this conversation, is to have a conversation about what a sort of fundable projects look like, because there's a lot that can be done to bridge the gap of understanding between the commercial banks on the one hand, who've got the ability to unlock many opportunities for people in the industry, as well as what it takes from a risk and risk allocation point of view to get comfortable with the sorts of infrastructure projects and
Yep.
energy projects we're speaking of.
100%. So at least we've got the blueprint as to what will be discussed, and of course, clarity as to how to make sure that your projects are funding ready, that you are able to fully comprehend the kind of financial resources that can be unlocked from the various institutions that are listed here today. And most importantly, walk away with some solutions, and maybe we'll nudge them to make some commitments, right? Maybe. We'll just do that. Over to you, sir. Thank you so much. We have about 40 minutes for this conversation, so we will take it till about 10 minutes after 11 o'clock, just to ensure that we do work in the interests of being on time for everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, Gugu. And please do keep us honest on time. I'll keep an eye on you and you just hint and indicate. So what we've done with this panel is we've had a lot of prep time, right? So we've engaged with each other quite a bit in preparation for this August occasion. Certain themes started to come through. One of them is that we always want to talk about the ultimate product, the ultimate service. This is what banks do. And sometimes that is an appropriate position when you are in a finance conference specifically. But you know, this is not just about funding. This is about how do we get confidence into the system? How do we learn from what's come before? And how do we optimize the resources that we have available? Because it is a crisis response. So we have to be very diligent in how we move. So here are my opening thoughts and comments, which I'd like to then put forward as a challenge to the panel. We've shared some of these notes, and we've had input from government representatives as well. The first is that a lot of market commentators point to the success of the REAP program, of which many of us here have been intimately involved, as a blueprint for planning, coordination, partnering, execution, and to some extent, broad-based economic participation. Now, attempts to replicate this for crisis management obviously need to be done carefully. Different environment, different drivers. But the ability to be able to put an enabling environment will do certain things. One, it'll increase visibility, inclusion, buy-in, transparency, which leads to confidence, and that leads ultimately to bankability. But the first thing that I should put as a challenge to government as well is continuity. Having convened here today, we need to know now as we leave or soon thereafter when the follow-up to this crisis conference is going to be, so that the work that we start on now, we can know which is the foundation work. We can plan as to when we can start building the rooms for each one of the competence areas that we're going to have. The competence areas basically referring to the panel sections, right? But the foundation for this enabling environment are the following points, and this is where I'd like the conversation to really start a lot. Coordination amongst key parties. I listened when we began in the Q&A section, if you can call it that, inverted commas. One of the commentators said, where's IDC or where's so-and-so and so-and-so. So as you know, coordination of all these parties will be important. Yes, we put this together. I understand that, but obviously we are all going to be working together on that. The second is procurement, fit for use models. And I'll go into a few more comments on that shortly. Then structuring, and Hussein and I spent a lot of time last night talking about the importance of structuring, including standard documents. We're going to have, if we ever look at what is within Gauteng's delegated authority or competence, we've got government buildings, we've got various government services, and then we've got the ratepayers and the participants in this economy here. That ranges from what we call CNI, and to make that clearer, that's commercial and industrial users, to buildings themselves, to households, and to utility as well. So the type of documents that enable that process to run. When Treasury ran and DOE ran the REAP program, they did consult with us banks. Jose, in fact, was a big part of that process around the types of standard documents that enable the program to flow. Then number 4 is the guarantees that are required to support lender risk. And we've got to approach this from a theory of constraints perspective. We don't have an open checkbook. Government doesn't have an open checkbook. How do we optimize the guarantees that can make the activity at this level, having had a lot of success at the utility level, mind you, through REAP? How do we then, they say, puff and pass, right? How do we pass that on to the provincial level? Then the incentives for generation, DX, which is DSM, sorry, demand side management, demand aggregation, CNI households, internal skills capacity and advisors, and lastly, the quick wins. Because the quick wins are important. They build confidence and they show momentum. And with momentum, you get more input and more participation. So I'm going to start by suggesting to one of my panel members, I'm going to start with Jose, to reflect on her experience in the REAP program so that we can take the lessons from that and that can be widely shared, how it led to the optimal structuring of the agreements so that we all know what we are gathering around, because those agreements are what the funders are going to go with. And everyone around the table here has had experience working with those, and you know how standardized they were. So Jose, let me start there. I know you've prepared your own spiel, but just for sense of experiency, your comments on REAP and what you went through.
Thank you, Clive. I think that from a REAP perspective, South Africa, just to provide a context, at the time was trying to come up with a procurement program for renewable energy independent power producers in South Africa. And various parties had tried efforts, different efforts, including NERSA, but these efforts were not yielding results. So I worked for the DBSA at the time, and we looked at a diagnosis of what exactly is causing that program not to move. And one of the things that we found was that all of the interventions were coming from a government perspective, but from the commercial aspect, the power purchase agreement, for instance, was not commercially acceptable to banks. So we went out and took a grant funding and looked for international lawyers to benchmark a power purchase agreement internationally that would be acceptable to South Africa, and we had consultations with those parties to say, what would you like to see in a power purchase agreement that's standardized for South Africa? And that is what, in the end, we had a standardized power purchase agreement. There was also a setting up of the IPP office to undergo the procurement process, to set up the whole process of procurement. And they were helped by the DBSA to do that. Because again, it comes to which party has the relevant skills to make things happen. Very often, I worked for government for many times. Very often, one person runs around and is supposed to have all the skills that are required to unlock things. It does not work like that. The relevant party with the relevant skills must be in the work stream that will make things move. So the procurement process, we did that through the DBSA, helping government to do it. And we then also, because at that time, the renewable energy was not even in existence in South Africa in a big scale, we then got international transaction advisors to sit around from a legal, technical, environmental, and all the other aspects that need to make this program work, to advise us how have they done it in their spheres. And that is how the IPP office was set up.
Thanks, Jose. And the nice thing out of the success of IPP office and the process you went through with DBSA, et cetera, and Department of Energy, is that those skills are now here. They're resident in South Africa, and we can leverage those skills. So I'd like to bring in Mohan, because you mentioned the role of DBSA. And like I said earlier, one of the earlier gentlemen spoke about where's everyone around this table? And DBSA has played really a critical role in bringing everyone in crowding everyone in, not just officials in the private sector, but banks as well. So Mahan, would you mind just commenting on that aspect of crowding in the skills and the resources and helping with process so that we can ultimately get to fundable projects?
Thanks. I think my work's already been done here by Jose, talking about the DBSA and the work, which is, so thank you very much for sharing that. From our perspectives, look, there are lessons to be taken from the REAP program and applied. But in the context that we're here today, which is about this province, Gauteng, the municipalities that are here and what's the role. So, I'd almost like to be able to speak to the Premier, to the MECs that are here, the HODs as well, which is, that program is good and fine. But where we are now, there are opportunities to move much faster. And, you've got everybody here, whether they are the people that are, bringing in the technology and then the ability to implement it, maintain it, create jobs in the country in doing so, and solve the energy crisis. So it's about how do we move fast, right, to get to that. And so for me now, the scenarios are such. As a province, there's only so much you can do. There are certain buildings that you own. There are certain provincial departments that we can work with to finance them, whether especially in education, healthcare, and their buildings, to get them to start generating power, making their buildings more energy efficient, right? But beyond that, what's key, and I'm glad we had the mayor of Johannesburg here, is the municipalities have the massive balance sheets. And as I mentioned, municipalities and municipal financing is a leading part of the work that we do as the DBSA. And we want to work with each and every one of them to help them generate their own power, so that, as the gentleman from Salga was speaking about, that they're not being cut out of the process either, right? Help them generate their own power, which they have the ability to do, and then transmit that through the electricity distribution networks that they themselves own. Now, already we've put in a program where we're working with a number of mid-sized cities to provide them with feasibility funding to do exactly that. Just yesterday in our investment committee, we approved funding for KSD municipality in the Eastern Cape to support them. There's another 3 that's coming through. We've got our energy and municipal financing teams here. Maybe they can stand up quickly just so the people know who to come and speak to later on. Mojabang, Sitsi, these are the ladies, who you can work with around those areas. They can help municipalities with the feasibility work and then the financing. And also crucially, we can help provide financing for Black-owned, female-owned businesses so that they can have a significant equity participation as well in those projects. Key elements then is also opening up the C&I market. We've started funding that market. Just at the end of last year, we funded Tronox, which is a large mineral sands company working with RMB as well, on, I think it's about a 4 to 4.5 billion rand project, 200 megawatts of solar, but we can work with much smaller size entities as well. The small, mid-sized businesses come up with a funding mechanism to help fund them as well. So for me, it's not necessarily then taking the lessons in all cases from REAP, but it's also working around, coming up with funding models to go from the utility scale down smaller. But one additional thing is, like we've set up the IPP office and helped fund it, we also provide funding for a number of provincial PMUs working with the departments of cooperative governance at the provincial level. So MEC, that's something that we can also do in Gauteng to help coordinate the work in the province to bring as many projects to feasibility or to bankability as possible. So those are the things that we can do.
Fantastic. Thanks. I'm going to switch to our last speaker. And of course, you are an honorary guest. At any time, you just jump right in. But what I want Cyprian to reflect on is, just based on what the previous 2 speakers have said, almost as a representatives of the commercial banking side of things, What you see, firstly, let me rather build on what Mohan has spoken about, which is at the municipal level, the bankability of the municipal approach that he's talking about. I appreciate you may or may not have been involved in that. And if you don't have a lot of content on that, please talk about bankability at a higher level. But I just want to get a sense of how DBSA can crowd you in to be able to take a slice of that pie.
Thank you on that. From my perspective, as I was reflecting on what both the speakers before me had mentioned, is that the term bankability implies a lot, but also hides a lot, right? In the space that we're in the state of, in any kind of energy crisis state that we're in, the conversation is more about, from a bankability point of view, what risks show themselves to be available and what risks are you able as a financial institution that is kind of the backbone of flow in and flow out of funding in the economy can take. And from our perspective on allow a very clear and concise framework for any funder walking into a project to understand what the real risks are, all the way from can the solar panel actually generate enough power for the needs we're going for, all the way to what does that mean if we are unable to do that, and is the project protected, and are the people who've invested protected, and how do you run the solar plant as a going concern? So bankability in my head is more a question about the sorts of risks that the institutions are taking, how we describe those risks, how we speak about those risks, and ultimately, how do we make sure the people who are most technically competent and financially competent to take those risks are the ones who find themselves in the situation. And that's the unique position that across from kind of retail solutions all the way to the largest corporate solutions, we need to be focused on. Now, a lot of the conversation that from DBSA is incredibly critical and poignant to me, because the sorts of work to kickstart the conversation of feasibility, the conversation of risk allocation is a key step in reaching to the point where the commercial banks who've got a lot more of a higher risk mandate to make sure they protect their balance sheet in order for the country not to collapse, need to think about. So the responsibility to ensure that feasibility studies are happening, to make sure that the correct level of depth of understanding in that process is ultimately one of the key pillars to unlocking commercial funding in South Africa and really globally. So from a municipal point of view, there's a lot to be learned from the IPP process in the past 10 years, but from a slightly smaller scale municipal solution point of view, and in the interest of that agility that we want to reach the point where we can fund these projects and these initiatives, it is critical to never lose sight of what we're ultimately doing here. We're in the business of allocating risk to people who can do it the best. I mean, and a lighthearted sort of example thereof is, in as much as in the kind of little flat I live in, I need to make sure that if I want my electricity to work, that I hire a qualified electrician to try and repair what is wrong. If I want a car that I'm in to get fixed, I want to make sure the relevant professional does that. The reason we allocate those risks out is to ensure that although there's a cost to it, the reality, you have more consistency and movement over time. So those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, fantastic. I think the other microphone is back now. It's almost like load shedding comes on and off. Just 1 second before you come on again, Mohan. So, Dr. Mantlana, Presidential Climate Commissioner, you also have that role, right?
Yes.
So I'd like you to just prepare some comments on your side. You may not be involved in this. We just don't have anyone from Dr. Ramokgopa's presidential coordinating committee on energy here, right? But if you can, one of the things that we've got to think about is we heard a lot of projects being spoken about here. How do we capture that? Where does it reside? Because, you know, it's impossible to hear about projects, sit here and walk away from here and say, well, we've captured all of that. So in there is a database of projects. I know also one of the, you see, I'm not a Standard Bank anymore. I can talk freely about banks. I know Nedbank runs an infrastructure database. DBSA does as well. Where do we get the single source of truth where everything can be deposited and you know your project has been registered and it will be evaluated by someone? It's a pre-assessment. It's not saying it has succeeded. Just so that we reduce the pressure on individuals who are sitting here to be saying something about projects that they're not in a position to say anything. So,
Well, you want me to do?
yes, you can talk on that in a second, but let Mohan make his point.
From the PCC perspective, in terms of capturing, where is the database residing for these kind of initiatives that we had this morning? We are not there yet. I want to be clear about that. We are not there yet. I am aware that within the PCC structure, within the Presidential Climate Commission structure, there is a component there that deals with what is called monitoring and evaluation. It's still nascent. It's still being formed. We still do not know how it's going to shape up to be. But one of the objectives of that team is to is to be aware of the landscape, who is doing what, how, where, why, with whose funding. But that work has not yet taken off. So that's all I can say at this stage.
And why do you think it hasn't taken off? How long has that been going? 2 years? 3? Chris is calling me to order. Mohan.
I think there's a feasibility study being done about it. That's why. The reality is, I think we know a lot of the solutions, right? For instance, I was reading how, based on the amount of solar panels that were imported, there was an estimate by one of the big 4 auditing firms that the equivalent of about 2 gigawatts of solar, would be coming through in the residential and small commercial space. Now, hopefully that's actually even helping us so that, we could be in an even worse situation. So what I'm suggesting as well is, we're engaging quite a bit with the Western Cape and their provincial treasury. They put forward a number of projects. A lot of them are solar, but not all of them. And also, what I found quite interesting is the model that they've got, where by the middle of this year, businesses will be able to sell back into the grid, and hopefully residences from next year. Now, certainly, Gauteng, can easily take the lead on that as well. Obviously, you do need some approvals from Treasury to allow you to do that. But I think that's another quick win. Selfishly, I've got a house where I produce, solar. I've got a battery, but after midday, that energy just goes nowhere. So that's a lot of power that can be brought quickly into the grid. And it's probably the quickest way. We can do it within 2 months, in a lot of cases. One of the ways now, the role that the DBSA can support that is, there was a comment that those meters cost a lot of money. They cost, let's say, 12,000 rands each. Now, we can put together a facility to help fund those meters and get paid back through some mechanism, so that a lot more houses can access that and not have to put up that upfront capital, right? I know the banks themselves as well have started opening up for people that have bonds to be able to access those bonds, to be able to, put in solar and battery systems as well. So there are innovative solutions that the market, the banks, the DFIs are able to bring in, but there is some legislative changes that are needed to help promote what is already happening, but to really fast track it so it happens much more quickly.
Thanks. And one of the outputs from our panel that I undertake we will do is produce a list of those quick wins. I will canvass the panel members after this and say, here's some quick wins that we've seen, because those are very, very important. And I'm glad to see the Premier nodding to that. I did that one specially for Premier. So I want to come back to Cyprian on behalf of the commercial banks as well. Appetite, I think I heard you talk about risk. So I don't want to talk so much about allocate risk to the party that's best able to execute it. No. For this, I want to know, are South African banks ready to take more Gavi risk or on this, right? And it's about portfolio risk. So are we ready to really put our balance sheet, and on what type of tenors are we able to put our balance sheet? Because this is going to require banks to be putting more down. And if that is a challenge, to what extent do you need the guarantees to be put in place? So I just want to talk a little bit about the real constraints that sometimes when you go back to your credit committees, you have to face that. I want the audience to just be aware of that.
Yeah, so conversation about risk appetite is always one that's pretty much institution specific, but there are elements of it that are kind of more around the market. I think what I find is that the willingness for financial institutions to do what it needs to be done to take Gavi risk has always been healthy, because financial institutions are intrinsically linked to the functioning of that same government and the fiscus. The complexity comes into the ways in which we are, the banking community is expected to hold capital to account for said risk, to ensure that no one big event can cause an entire bank to collapse all at once. So that's just some of the foreground. In terms of appetite for municipal risk and in terms of appetite for government risk in general, what really assists any fruitful conversation around whether more risk can be taken for longer tenors, ironically, just goes back to the conversation about what frameworks have provincial governments, national governments, local governments put in place to ensure that these programs succeed over longer periods of time. Because as we've mentioned earlier, if you put down a wind farm with a bunch of panels with a 20-year lifespan, then you need the frameworks, and not just the legal frameworks, but the general design framework of that project to think broader than just, for example, a 5-year funding requirement or a 10-year funding requirement. So these things are definitely interlinked, and often a conversation with senior executive credit people within banks with that regard is often around, have you thought about everything that is worth thinking about? And the more certainty you have around what those things are, the more confidence you can take longer term views with. So it's about creating stability unlocks appetite is ultimately what the conversation is about. And there was a question earlier on by a gentleman raising the very same question that effectively I'm also raising, which is around, it is often infeasible to get 1 year or 2-year contracts on the back of things that take a massive amount of capital outlay. And it's solutions to problems of that nature that builds the sort of confidence that opens risk appetite.
Okay.
And appetite is always in conversation. It's an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. So we're getting to the end. We're going to have about 10 minutes left. I've got a couple of suggestions as well. One, it's good to get the retirement industry involved with the bankers. I'll tell you why. So what Mohan mentioned, the adding of extra assets onto your house that the banks can do for self-generation from home. So, you know, like solar panels, etc. One thing that I do know is if a bank has got a home loan or someone and, you know, they're paying it, etc., sometimes putting more risk onto that can become a bit of a deterrent. However, we know that there's been changes to various things, including the retirement system, where you've got a two-pot system on the go. So there are other pockets of liquidity that are starting to appear, which we need to have a conversation about. And simply say, if you've got a two-pot system and there's some liquidity you can access, what do you use that for? What's the most optimal way of using that that's good for the economy and good for everyone? So I would encourage GPG to really make sure that, and we'll work with everyone, Vic, to make sure that happens. So in conclusion, Jose, who's been kicking me under the table, by the way, every time I say something that is a bit short left. So Jose, it's true. I'd like Jose to just give us, she's had so much experience, to give us some of her concluding thoughts. And also elevating the minutes of gender participation on the profile by giving you the mic at the end, Jose. So knock it out the park.
Colleagues, the reality is that we've got a number of projects, programs that Gauteng could be unlocking. And it's been years that some of these projects have been in the pipeline. So there is no question with respect to whether there's funding or not. There is no question with respect to whether there are projects or not. So this discussion should be saying, why are these projects not meeting the lenders? What is the problem? So Mohan from DBSA can have facilities to help municipalities, but there's a biofuels, a biomass to energy project that has been in the pipeline for years, and that project is not being unlocked. Why? I think that is the conversation we should be having. Why? Because if we talk, for instance, about having done a project with Tronox, what does Tronox have? They've got transaction advisors that help them package those projects to such an extent that they're de-risked and they meet that criteria that DBSA is expecting. They meet that criteria that the commercial bank is expecting. There's project preparation funds that are available from IDC, from all of that. I'll talk about an example in Gauteng of a project that maybe I shouldn't say I worked on, let me not get into the details, but there's a project that I worked on that did not succeed, and it's been in the pipeline for many years. Why was that? The counterparty. If the counterparty in the case of a transaction, say, you made an example here of a project where you're trying to convert boilers that use coal to gas, and that project has not been going anywhere. Why is that? There's one reason, the counterparty. Who is the counterparty? Is the Department of Health. Is the Department of Health bankable as an entity? No. So if you keep taking that transaction to the lenders, it's gonna keep coming back and we're gonna go around in circle. So I'm proposing a methodical way of looking at each of these programs, projects, that says, why are they not bankable? Because we know what the criteria of the bank is. We know what to prepare a project means, but we are not doing it practically because we are not methodically assessing what are the bottlenecks with respect to all of these projects and programs.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to thank the panel. We probably don't have time. I think they said 10 past. We should be done, Gugu. Is that right?
Just for questions, in case there might be any from the floor.
Okay.
So we'll take it to 11.
Sure. Gugu, would you mind helping me run this particular part of things?
So there's quite a few questions.
Exactly.
Did you see whose hand
Now
popped
you
up
see
first?
why I handed it over to you.
Perfect. Maybe let's take it in terms of stakeholders. Ooh, okay, quite a few. We'll start on that end because I'm aware that we haven't had any questions. There's a gentleman in the corner, you had your hand up. I'd just like to identify, are there any other roving mics that we actually have available? Perfect, 2. Anyone's on that end? Perfect. If we could start with you, sir. There was one in the center. You'll pardon us because the lights are quite bright on our end. I see there's a flashing light as well. And we'll take one in that particular corner. What we do hope is that to get through as many questions as possible, we'd like to keep them as tight and succinct as possible. And where there's a repetition of topics, for us not to, or rather just address them generally if possible. But we'll start with your question, sir. Gent, you had your hand up, sir, and then we'll come to the middle and we'll take one more at the end. I'll take the blame for you, Nkai. Right? This side. Well, you'll have to pardon us, guys. We will try to get through as many questions as possible, but there is an opportunity for you to engage with the speakers on the sidelines, right? So we will endeavor to get to as many questions as possible, being that we have time constrictions, but we will continue to make sure that you do have an opportunity to engage. If you can go ahead, sir, by keeping it tight.
All right, thank you. Dr. Motlana, my question is directed to you, and it's themed around what you said about us being careful about what we message. The question that I have to you, it's on South Africa being one of the intensive carbon users. I'm looking at my own graph here. In absolute terms, with Eskom being the major contributor to carbon in South Africa, we're looking at about 200 million tons. But also, the energy from Eskom also goes to neighboring countries, etc. And then the barometer seems to be per capita. So the question that I have, is that really a proper way of us measuring CO2 emissions? Secondly, are our neighbors taking into consideration when that is drawn? Because if you reverse the graph, in absolute terms, South Africa is actually the least contributor. And for a lot of us who actually sell the concept of hydrogen internationally, we say, come to us here because we've got land, we've got sun, and as a result of that, you can come and source as much carbon credits as you can here.
Perfect. We'll ask you to wrap it there, sir, but your
All right.
question is succinct. Is the measurement of the carbon emissions correct? And are we taking our neighboring countries into account? We'll take the second question, which has come through, so that we can run through responses. If you could keep your question really tight, please, ma'am.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Zukiswa Lungu, and the company that I'm representing is called Konzonzo Holding. We have a solution that generates electricity. It's called a solar generated energy, and it's not using solar panels. Now, my question is to Mo. It's quite exciting and encouraging to hear that you've got funding that is dedicated to Black women, because it's such a big struggle. Because firstly, the red tape that we often face is what really prohibits us from being full participants in the economy. So my question is, now that you've identified that you are specific about looking after Black-owned businesses, what are you doing about the red tape that often is an obstacle? Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, ma'am. Your question has been noted. We'll take one more from that end of the audience. Sir, your hand is up. Please keep it up. If the roving mic can make its way to you. Perfect. Mo, I'm hoping you've noted the question as well as Dr. Motlana, and then we'll take responses from your questions, sir, as we wrap up.
Sure. Good day, everybody. My name is Barry Diaga. I'm the executive head for natural resources and energy at Standard Bank, where we've got a focused strategy, specifically around solutions in this space. So if I may make a brief comment and then followed by a question, I think my comment that I want to raise is to really take up the Premier on, his positioning in terms of ideas. And I think listening at everything, what I realize is there's a need for kind of 3 work streams. When I look at the residents of Gauteng, you effectively have 3 sectors here. Right at the bottom end, you've got your poorer communities, where energy equity that was mentioned by Dr. Brian, plays a key role. You've got a decentralized energy piece where I really think we can do a lot very quickly. And then the third piece is around the central generation, more the conventional model, that Nkla and the team spoke about. And I think we must really apply our minds to those because there might be different answers to those challenges. The question that I do have, I would like to direct to Dr. Brian in particular regarding the energy equity piece, because that's a major thing to say that, you also want to be inclusive in terms of energy solutions. Many of us in the room may afford our own backup systems and our own generation capacity, but how do we tackle, that specific community, and how do we enable that going forward? Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your questions. We are aware that we're under pressure for time, so there are questions we might not be able to get to. So I do strongly encourage you to make time to speak to some of our panelists at the end of today's session. Mo, if we can start with your question before Dr. Brian responds to both of those particular themes, you're more than welcome to add on to that, Nkai. Red tape, what are you doing to remove red tape now that you're in support of funding for Black women, youth, and people with disabilities?
Yeah, look, the question of red tape is a critical one. Now, remember, we are a provider of finance, right? So the question is, where's the red tape coming from? Hopefully it's not coming, from the DBSA itself. A lot of it sits, with government entities where there is a need for coordination. If I speak more about what we're doing, because, I'd rather do that.
Can I ask, are you speaking to government institutions then to assist with minimizing red tape?
Exactly, right. So for instance, one of the things is there are contracts that are provided to newer entities, Black, free, and women-owned entities, but they're not always able to get access to capital. So what we've set up is a working capital facility that helps provide them with the funding they need so that they can get started. Because one of the issues is, they're going to have to buy their own equipment, get started and only get paid back as they deliver the work.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of some of the government regulation. So that's an example of how we're trying to solve for that gap, that working capital requirement. And that's a new product we brought in. We're working with our own infrastructure delivery division, and we're hoping to roll that out to working with our state-owned entity partners and our municipal partners as well.
Got you. So it's not all gone away, but of course there are some opportunities to work around it. And as you've heard earlier on, funding is still available. If we could come to you, Mr. Mokana, you are mic'd up, so hopefully your mic is still working. So you can go ahead and respond firstly to the first question regarding the measure of carbon emissions, and if you could keep that succinct. If the measure of the output is accurate, given that we also distribute power to our neighboring partners, neighboring countries. And then the second question we had from the gentleman from Standard Bank. So if you could bolt them on in your response.
I'll be brief. Firstly, I want to agree with you. What I showed is not the only way of showing the carbon intensity. That's point number one. Then we have to ask, what is the conventional way? How is it done? If you go to Google Scholar and check in terms of scholarly, what is the approach that is used often? It is the approach that I have used. That said, it does not make it right or wrong. So we're not about black and white here. We're about convention. Conventionally, this is how I presented it, is how conventionally carbon intensity is presented. You have a strong point, I agree with you. On the issue of equity, there is no one way of dealing with access. We know that with the fossil fuel industry, we didn't completely solve the issue of energy poverty in South Africa. The issue is now that we are thinking about, now that we are in this, what in PCC we call just energy transition, what are the levers that we can tap to enable, to ensure that we leave no one behind? Now, I just want to be philosophical briefly there, sir. The concept of transition is underpinned by winners and losers. It's unfortunate that often transitions have winners and losers. And the issue that we need to address in South Africa is how do we reduce the number of losers in this energy transition? So what you are asking is more pragmatic, is the how question. How do we do that? And for me, it is empowering local government. How do we empower local government? Because they are the closest interface between those vulnerable communities and the sources of influence.
You've taken us down another path because I do see who says disagreeing, but
Yeah.
I will leave it with you to wrap it up. If you
Yeah. I think in wrapping up, and thanks to the panel members for the responses, what I'm sensing is the questions that have come up, Gugu, are my sense of the priority. We've got to be thinking, how do we put more electrons onto our networks?
Yep.
How do we reduce the pool, inefficient pool of those electrons, right? So increase this side and manage down on this side. And then who are those parties? How do we contract in? So I'd really like to encourage a lot of the discourse, the questions to be around how do we manage these two things? So for example, one thing we could be looking at is, should we have a demand aggregator? Somebody like the IDC, it could be the DBSA, it could be another entity within Gauteng, it could be the SEZs, right? Where they've got a lot of energy intensive users, they get capitalized because these individual PPAs, now these are the power purchase agreements, they are onerous. The party buying the power has to show this massive balance sheet, commit for a very long time before the banks come in. 100%. If you aggregate, it becomes easier, okay? So I'd like to focus a lot of the questions. I know there are a lot of other underlying issues like climate and so forth. I fully respect those. Increase electrons, decrease electrons. Let's have that capacity so we can get the economy to at least start turning over.
Definitely. Thank you very much. I do understand that there's quite a few themes that we do need to unpack and get through, and there's varying questions for various stakeholders who are here in the room. Fully comprehending and understanding the data and the figures and, of course, their accuracy and how it does translate into the measurement of funding and resources that can be allocated. Entrepreneurs themselves who are looking to procure funding and solutions that will be sustainable to their businesses, and, of course, financiers who are looking for other opportunities as well within the full value chain to make sure that we all participate.
Gugu, can
We'll
I
have to-
mention one last thing, please?
Nkai.
One last
You
one.
told me to keep you accountable, sir.
One last one. The projects, there was a lady who mentioned a project now. We have to get that PCC or some organization that can take in all the projects. We must get them here so they can show us when people register their projects, what are the criteria. So if somebody wants
100%.
black female funding, they must be able to put it on there. Thanks.
100%. Thank you so much. Solid point that's come through there. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, please give my panelists a round of applause and the moderator. And Guy, thank you so much for assisting us as they make their way off of stage or as you pass the left-hand side of the stage to shake the hand and, of course, receive acknowledgement from the Premier. This does take us to the next panel discussion that we'll move into, and we're going to shift into that conversation. That one does take us, ladies and gentlemen, into a theme of fully understanding how best it is that we can achieve. Ladies and gentlemen, fantastic. Thanks again to our panelists who have made their way off stage. Only because it's you, Premier, we'll acknowledge the disruption in the audience for a minute. Perfect. For the sake of time and in the best interest of time, we are going to try to move steadily ahead into the next few panel discussions to make sure that we do deep dive into many themes. What I'd also want to encourage many of you is that at the end of today's session, just after lunchtime, there will be breakaways as well as a networking and lunch opportunity. This is where you can direct your questions to the people that you'd like to speak to. So if you're an entrepreneur looking for specific funding, identify those in the room that have already stood up and, of course, mention the various financial services entities that they're from and speak to them directly. For key players also within local government, we do strongly encourage you as well to engage with many of our participants to fully understand how they can also unlock further value for you and assist perhaps in providing guidance as well that might make it easier to unlock capital and, of course, provide an opportunity to ensure that entrepreneurs within this space do grow. Our next panel discussion, ladies and gentlemen, is another one that will be held for at least 35 minutes, so taking us to just before 12 o'clock. This one will be moderated by Mr. Nhlanhla Gumede, who is a full-time regulator at the National Energy Regulator of South Africa. So I'm sure we have a lot of questions to ask him. Coupled by a panelist who will be joined, Dr. Rithabile. Thank you so much. Coupled by the CEO of the South African Photovoltaic Industry Association, Rithabile Milamo, Mr. Jacob Maroja, of course, needs no introduction, Executive Director of Aeronite Energy. Mr. Lawrence Kluter, who's from Rebel Group, and Marvin Baebi, who is a Senior Manager for Strategic Energy Projects at City Power. These are the guests who will be joining us and participating in our panel. Please warmly welcome them on stage as they do make their way up. And of course, a conversation that will be led by Nhlanhla Gumede. If there are any movements, any of you moving in and out of the room, we'll give you 2 minutes to do so. This is also just to ensure that our panelists can get settled in their seats and then, of course, commence with our conversation. But once we get going, we do kindly request that you remain seated, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, Babu Jack. Jabulani Baba. Thank you so much. Mr. Klitter, lovely to see you. Perfect, have a seat. Perfect. You are Marvin. Thank you so much. You can have a seat right there on the end, sir. Lovely to meet you, Tabile. Likewise. Dr. Maroka, lovely to see you, sir. Very well, thank you. Perfect. Are we all settled so far and ready for the next panel discussion? Are we all settled? Thumbs up, yes, no, maybe? Perfect. We're seeing some thumbs up and everyone's saying they're ready to go. I'll give the remaining participants just 30 more seconds to please make your way speedily out of the venue if you are leaving. I am aware that many of you are here to network and interact and, of course, look at the exhibition stands. So feel free to do so. And, of course, make sure that you walk away here with the questions that you need answered and, of course, solutions that you also want to have replied to. But as we commence, ladies and gentlemen, as mentioned, my panel here is going to take a look at identifying means and ways of ensuring that we find the right energy mix. And there's a lot of debate that we've been hearing about this, as has been mentioned by previous speakers. The debate is not for us to fight whether it's about coal or renewable energy, but really unpacking how it is that we maximize as much capacity from both of these resources to ensure that we do participate actively in a just transition, but of course making sure that we still meet the energy needs that we have in our country. So we will be hearing from our various panelists as well as speakers. Again, to give us a quick fire introduction, I think we should make our way down the panel to get some feedback from each of them so that we have a better understanding, clarity, and context as to the contributions that they are making to the conversation here today. I'll start on the far left of the stage with Mr. Lawrence Kluter. If you can give us just a 30-second summary of the role and function that you serve, and of course the insight and input that you're hoping will get out about finding the right mix of energy within the Gauteng province.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be invited to speak at this forum on this important topic. My name is Lawrence Kluter. I'm an engineer. I worked for many years at the CSIR, but now I work for a company called the Rebel Group, and sometimes this name gives us trouble. But we say we're an advisory firm in finance and economics. I'm one of the few engineers there, but we always say there's no change without a rebel. And I think this transition calls for some change. And I think, I was actually very pleasantly surprised with the questions from the floor. I thought we might have some coal fundamentalists in the room and so on. But I think it's clear that there's an upwelling of green entrepreneurs and people who want to help. And I'm excited to engage with them and to help steer the way forward.
Let's see how you stir the pot today here, Mr. Kluter, perhaps as a rebel. Retabile?
Yes, thank you very much. Gugu Retabile Melamu is the name. I'm the CEO of the South African Photovoltaic Industry Association. This feels more like a homecoming. I worked under MEC Maile and HOD Pindile for about 7 years, and I'm excited to be here. We would like to find out how we can collaborate more closely with government as industry.
Fantastic. Mr. Maroja.
My name is Jacob Maroga. I'm the Executive Director of Aeronite Energy. Excited for the invitation and looking forward to the contribution. Let's leave it there. Thank you.
Context of your background is very important to this conversation.
It's always not good to talk about your exes.
I cannot do that one. Marvin?
My name is Marvin Baepi. I'm the Senior Manager for Strategic Energy Project for City Power. I'm in charge of trying to end the load shedding and make the city sustainable.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Mr. Kumete, if you could just add context, and then from there, the conversation is yours.
Thank you. My name is Ndandla Kumede. I'm here in my personal capacity, but I work for the National Energy Regulator of South Africa.
I see it's important that you differentiate that.
My primary role is, of course, electricity regulation, but I come from it. I'm actually an engineer as well with an MBA, but I've been responsible for hydrocarbons and energy planning in my past life. I've also worked for Deloitte, for consulting companies like Deloitte and others. Thanks.
Fantastic. Well, there we've set the context, right? And I think for many of you, you're fully clear and understanding of the contributions we'll see out of this conversation. But again, if there are any questions, we'll leave it for the last 10 minutes of the conversation, so just after 12. But feel free to, of course, engage and fully understand the role that each of us do play as stakeholders and where the opportunities do lie to fully unpack a lot more opportunities. The floor is yours, Mr. Kumete.
Thank you, Coco. I actually thought, and unfortunately, I didn't have the same opportunity as Ntlai to coordinate the input from my panel, but I have a few questions for them. So, and I'm hoping I'll be asking those questions on your behalf. But before we do, I just thought I'll actually just set a background. I've prepared a five-slide presentation, which is meant to just probe things. I know that this is about technology. It's supposed to be about new technologies. If I can just get my slides up, please. I did request a break. Thank you. No, that's not this one. Sorry, it's version 3. That's a different one. This one. So it's going to be a problem. It's version 3. No. So this one talks about something else. It is also an interesting class that we will invite people to attend. It was meant to have been presented at the Mining Indaba. It's about the embedded generators, which a lot of this is also about, but this is not what I want to talk about today. But maybe as we wait for the slides to come up, maybe I can sit down as well. The mission here is achieving a resilient, energy secure province through diversified alternative energy mix. I think the key word here is diversified. The group that came before us is about portfolio. It's about risk, it's about portfolio. This is no different. So the thrust of the presentation that I'm going to make is one that talks about diversity. I'm afraid I am going to be controversial, and I'll actually show the reason why. We cannot invest in one technology. We were as a country, even when we were reliant on coal, we still had nuclear, we had hydro, you had others. My request is, as we move forward, we do not risk this economy by investing in one technology. So that's the first thing. The second issue is that the drive in terms of what we all do is, and this is the thrust of this panel, it's about supply. We tend to be supply or push focused, and most of the people who tend to attend these seminars are people that are selling a service. We forgot the most important thing, the buyers of the service, the consumers. What is it that they need? What is it that the business out there? Jose talked about counterparties. The counterparty in energy has always been, sorry, I'm going to run out of words. Please put up my presentation. The counterparty in the renewable energy program has been Eskom. And Eskom with government guarantees shouldn't be looking at counterparties from people who are actually buying the power. Embedded generation is largely about companies themselves, the Anglo-Americans, whatever, who are consumers of energy, who are then saying, I'd like to provide a 10-year contract or a 20-year contract. Whether that 10-year contract is bankable is another story. Now, sorry, man, it's in that, it is in the laptop. Sorry, I am, unfortunately, because of the controversy, I do want to put just a few pictures, because I don't want to mislead you. I would want you to give the numbers. I would like to give you data and let you make up your own mind. But what I'm asking here is that should we not be looking at a consumer-led or a demand-led solution? For instance, we want to expand mining. As we want to expand our manufacturing. As we go into that manufacturing space, there's going to be another problem with that laptop. As we go into that manufacturing space, for instance, even with green minerals, how do we have green minerals? How do we have green minerals? Are we looking at mining them and exporting them raw, or are we wanting to beneficiate them in the country? If we want to beneficiate them in the country, do we have the right energy mix to be able to allow for that beneficiation to happen? So that is fundamentally the question. Or are we looking to simply say, yes, we're going to have cobalt, if we have cobalt in the country, we're going to have all of these things that require a certain type of energy intensity, reliability, and extend 24/7 application. Are we going to use that and say, well, we can't process these minerals and export them? Are we going to do what we're doing with platinum at the moment, where we are actually shipping out the concentrate, and yet we've got platinum, but we don't actually now beneficiate to the same extent that we should, because we don't have electricity that goes into the first step in that refining. That we are now shipping out our concentrate. Yes, we may have platinum, but we are shipping out the platinum. We're going to buy it back as beneficiated platinum. Is that what we are going? So in fact, that's the story I wanted to put up, but with numbers. Unfortunately, when technology fails you, it's a problem. Okay, maybe I can just skip so I don't waste people's time and allow the panelists to introduce their topics first, whilst I'm actually sorting out my presentation, my background. Starting with you, sir.
Okay. When I introduced myself, I forgot to say how I got to be invited here. I'm currently working with the Gauteng province and the presidency, specifically Witness and HOD Blake, on green hydrogen industrialization in Gauteng. Now, Premier Lesofie spoke about the new gold, and I think in the Northern Cape and in the Western Cape, they've discovered gold, and they have very ambitious plans to generate green hydrogen from our fantastic solar and wind resources. And that's good, but what does this mean for Gauteng? I think it's unlikely that we from Gauteng will be exporting green hydrogen, but we have a different opportunity. We are the most industrialized province, and I think the opportunity for us is to be a front runner in the industrial utilization of green hydrogen, using green hydrogen to decarbonize our transport system. We are the hub, everything goes through Gauteng, as well as bringing resilience to our energy system. So I think green hydrogen is not in itself a source of energy, it's an energy carrier. And like, I think one of the questions is, what's the best form of an energy carrier? And no doubt we may have become a little bit jaded about electricity, but it's still a wonderful thing. The fact that someone can burn coal or generate electricity a very far way away, and at home we can power our stove and so on. It's a remarkably versatile form of energy. So electricity is in the end the way to go, and most things should be done through electricity, and we need to electrify more things. I know it doesn't feel like that sometimes, and we should use green hydrogen for those things where we cannot use electricity, that we cannot directly electrify. For instance, Ntate Gumede spoke about adding value to our minerals. One of the examples that emits a lot of carbon is steel making. But by using green hydrogen, you can reduce, you can make net zero steel. They're currently experimenting with that in Sweden. AMSA and Sasol are looking at capturing the CO2 streams from the plants in Vanderbijl. And in Saldanha, we have a type of plant where we can actually make green hydrogen by switching from natural gas to green hydrogen. But I think the other issue is that one of the problems, I think one of the speakers said that they have I think it was from the DBSA, that they have these solar panels, but by the time the batteries are charged, after that, you'll just see this power that's wasted, that you can't do anything with because you can't currently sell it to the municipality. But at the utility scale, that problem exists as well. In the middle of the day, you're going to make more electricity than what the demand is. And one of the things you can do with that excess electricity is to make hydrogen, which can then be used for energy as a kind of a battery or in various industrial applications. And I think Gauteng is well positioned for those kind of applications. So maybe just a few thoughts from my side.
Thank you. Maybe
Chair,
your introduction as well?
Can I go? Again, it's great to be here, and thank you very much for inviting Sabvia. Maybe a bit about who we are as an association. We represent the interest of the members. These members operate along the entire solar PV value chain. So from IPPs to banks. In fact, I see some of our members here from banking, some of the companies that are in the bank. So the major 4 banks in South Africa are members of Sabvia, including, believe it or not, Eskom is also a member of ours. And we are looking to partner with the likes of SIFA. And the reason why that is important is if we are to really intervene meaningfully, we understand that we can't do it alone. And therefore, we need all the partners to come to the party to begin to come up with a solution. So it's no use Standard Bank or ABSA being on their own while IPPs or EPCs or even end users are on their own. So that's who we are as an association. We are really not anti-chair, other technologies. We're very clear as Sabvia that we understand the strength of our technology. And we also appreciate and acknowledge the strength of other technology. And we try as much as possible to our best ability to make sure that in the space that we operate, we deliver the best service to the citizens, as an association, the best services to our members. But maybe allow me to share a bit of a good story, because oftentimes when we're in these kinds of gatherings, we talk about how terrible things are. And they are terrible. It's not good to be load shed for 4 hours a day. But there is a revolution, a solar revolution happening in Gauteng. And I'd like to give you some statistics. I think the previous panel was talking about whether statistics exist on projects and the appetite that exists. We do have some of that collected. We've worked with Eskom in the past to try and get a sense of what the appetite is across the various provinces. But just for information, since 2020, Gauteng has registered 200 solar PV projects with NESA. And these are projects that are above 100 kilowatts. Currently, I think the latest project, which is the biggest, is in, I'll get the details now, but it's a 50 megawatt farm, solar farm, We often talk about solar farms in Gauteng and talk about us going to implement them. They exist. There is a solar farm, Premier, in Gauteng. And these don't come cheap. Just to give you a sense of how much that is, it's about 700 million rand. But what is good to note is that the payback time is about 5 years for that 100 megawatt, that 50 megawatt project. So we're seeing growth of the sector in that space. And if you give me an opportunity later, moderator, I'll tell you another good story about what is happening in the rooftop space in the domestic market. We breached 1 gigawatt of installed capacity, solar PV alone. We're doubling the REAP in 2022 alone. So when I talk about a solar revolution, I'm not bluffing. It's because things are happening on the ground. And we have developed mechanisms to record them so that we're able to report all these good stories. Yes.
Thank you. I'll give you an opportunity, but I happen to have the same statistics that you've got on the presentation.
Okay, thank you. Premier said solutions, but I'll talk context before we come to solutions. I'm going to use the words Gauteng and energy as an example of the context I want to give. It's not accidental that this province is called Gauteng. It's because in this region, in fact, the amount of gold that has been extracted in South Africa historically still remains, South Africa still remains number one in terms of gold extracted in the world, and most of it in Gauteng. In 1884, a young Bankings stumbled on gold in Gauteng, and it sparked 100 years of development up to where we are. Now, why is that important? The extraction of gold in South Africa was not an accident. When you go to 1970, we were extracting almost 90% of the world production of gold in the world. It didn't happen accidentally because from about 1910, 1920, Jan Smuts and his mates collaborated to create an industrial system around mining and gold being number one. So the energy system, the transport system, the finance system was geared at mining and gold being at the pinnacle of that. And it was a long-term project. The industrial base that we have is a mining outcome. So if Gauteng is and continue to be the premier both province and city in Africa, that kind of vision has to come to the fore. Now I go to the word energy, another example. In 2005, 2010, when you look at China and the output of China in terms of PV solar, it was nowhere, right? In 2022, China produces close to 90% of all PV produced in the world. In some of the ingredients, like the wafers that goes into the making of solar panels, they produce 97%, right? It didn't happen by accident. For the past 10 years, they created zones, companies, supply chain. They identify minerals around the world that are going to go into the solar PV. They looked at the trend that the world is going to go renewable. We're going to be the country to make renewable the energy of the future. They made it cheap, they made it reliable, they made it in scale, right? But ironically, all of their PV modules, 60% of them derive their energy from coal. They are accelerating their coal plants to actually make renewables, because when you look at the process of making PV modules, it requires high intensity energy, arc furnaces. And in the silicon production, in the actual chemical production, you need carbon to actually produce metallurgical grade silicon. So coal is an important part of the PV of the world. Now, why are these things important? They are important because it is not only about the energy system in the end of the day. At the end of the day is, what is our industrial vision? What economic and what is the energy system we need to build for that future? And when a foreigner, when an alien would come to South Africa and ask, what is the industrial vision of South Africa? And by just things that we're talking about, they'll think our vision is load shedding and renewables. Because we are defining ourselves by our problems, not by our vision. My view is the debate about the energy mix is actually a lost debate. The issue is, what is our economic industrial vision? What is it that we then need to do to power that vision? And then the rest becomes irrelevant. So for me, if Gauteng has to go back there, Mr. Premier, the issue is going to be leaders with the industrial vision who will follow with the technical solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Maroga. The last introduction, then I'll go back to my presentation. Unfortunately, a lot of the speakers would have preempted what I have on the presentation, which is good though. Okay.
I'd like to look at the topic and maybe separate it into two parts. I thought there was a part that spoke about resilience, and the other one spoke about security. As many might know that are here, to build a coal power station, including feasibility and all that, takes in excess of 6 years, and a few years for hydro, and more, a decade or so for nuclear and so on. And if we go to renewable, it will, or what many would say solar or wind, it will take in excess of 24 months. If earlier, it can be about 20 or so. So if one looks at all of those things, you can then clearly understand that with this technology at the present moment, or the challenge that we have, it will be very difficult for us to be resilient to the current challenge, which is load shedding. However, these technologies that I've mentioned, they'll be very much of use as a security in the future. So we looked at those options and those technologies as a municipality and as a Gauteng as a whole, to say, maybe since we cannot, or it will take a little bit longer for us to bring on a new supply and technologies, then maybe we should look at how we can best reduce our consumption in a way that is not gonna actually affect our economical activities and less felt by our consumers. We looked at different technologies there, and one might say we looked at load limiting technology, where it then allows one to reduce or allows the controller to reduce the power that they can send to a consumer. I'll give an example of that to say, if a consumer is using an 80 amps meter, we'll then reduce it to about 20 amps. And by doing so, in many households, we will then be able to reduce the pressure on the grid, while some might not cook, yes, but at least one will watch TV and do other things in the house. It's better than being in a blackout. Is that? So, and that kind of technology, one would say it will be very impossible for one to use a load limiting in an industrial or large power users. As you know, their equipment that they are using might be damaged with the up and downs of the amps. So it will obviously be affecting the households, but the economical activity will be continuing, and in those so doing, it will obviously be preserving many jobs with that and growing the GDP. So we then said, if you look at affluent areas, one can then say the highest consumer is mostly our geysers. And the affluent areas, people leave their geysers for the whole day, whether they use it or not, without switching them off and going to work. So with that, if one takes a technology of geyser relay, and whenever the system is under pressure, in most times is those times where people are at work and the manufacturers and all of that are at their peak. So with so doing, we can also trip those geysers and make sure that we also reduce the pressure on the grid. And if you look at the lower and medium LSM, one can then say we had a good program. I think Mr. Magoka here can talk about it, what we call the solar water geysers. I think that was a very good program, putting aside what had happened with it or the components of those. But that can be very helpful because of, if you look at those LSM is people that are mostly at home and they boil their kettle, they use N to take bath and all of that. And if one installed it at those, it can really also our own buildings as government and private entities. I don't think the buildings are energy efficient, and we really are using that good. And if you look at Gauteng, I heard my fellow panelists there saying that it is 700 million to build a solar farm, and which I agree with those numbers. However, in a short period of time, that might be a huge capital, and to get the land rights and all the feasibilities that must go into it. I don't think it would be a good idea for us to go that route if we are to be resilient. In terms of security, as I said, I agree. But we have roofs and buildings in Joburg and in the whole of Gauteng where we can then put this big solar farm, but at a milestone to put in 20 buildings, this and that. That power will still be going into the grid, and obviously some of it we can then dispatch at the time. Because of, if you look at all of this, we also have to take into consideration the tariff increase, moderator, that has happened in all these years. It's a lot. And if you look at the peak, if you look at the peak for Eskom, what the tariff there, it's I think it's a bit high. So if we look at our consumers and we discharge that power that we have there during peak, so that when Eskom goes to NERSA wanting, or when NERSA grants municipality 18, we can then say, no, we want 15 instead of 18. But no, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I know I've got 10 minutes, or it was 10 minutes then, but it's now 9 minutes. Okay. Now this thing doesn't work either. Trying. Okay. So I actually thought I was going to start this conversation differently. I know what we were asked, and in Premier, we have to apologize. We were asked here to come with solutions in terms of technologies. All of us here, other than perhaps the first two speakers, have not addressed that. But there's been saying there must be a demand response. There's been the saying, you shouldn't look at the supply, but look at what you are trying to do, and everything else comes into play. But I thought to start the conversation, it would be nice to have started, let's have a shared view of what we mean by energy security. Everybody uses this term, but it means very different things to different people. In fact, unfortunately, the energy, this thing is, honestly, I have no idea how to, I know how to go back, but, so what I thought we'll do is that we start with a shared thing that says, so, energy security is not just about supply. It is also not just about diversity, but it is about looking at the demand sectors, looking at what you do with the economy. Because the whole point here is you are doing all of this. Energy is not an end. Energy is a means to an end. So as long as we understand that sometimes it's about trying to understand what is it that you need to do to drive economic growth and poverty alleviation. So I'll leave that definition with you. And maybe just to say, quick one on this, most of us tend to follow, the discussions tend to be on the infrastructure. Plants, generation plants, refineries, pipelines, wires. But energy is not just about that. The bigger energy space is about resources that you have as a country. It's about your demand sectors, your economy. What is it that your economy needs? You need to understand the household needs, as he has explained. You need to understand industrial needs, as Mr. Maroha has also explained. And everything that you do must be in response to that. It's not just about infrastructure. The third issue is that, which is unfortunately, I'm going to be a bit critical on this one. We all talked, Premier spoke about the new gold is energy. Unfortunately, in life, in utilities, that's not where we create jobs. That's not where the value is created. The value is created by taking and monetizing your resources. The value is created by taking the energy that you've got and using it to add value to things that you have in the country. So I just want to warn that if our idea that the future is about us making energy, and that's where the jobs are going to be, we are misleading each other. I just thought I would actually use this example. I think he's raised the point, and this is about focusing on the demand. The household sector, the demand is largely 80% thermal. 80% thermal. Now, if you come with a technology which does not address this 80% thermal, you are failing the household technology. If you can move on, please. I don't know, I think you're driving it for me. I did say I had the statistics to Tabela. Unfortunately, where we face, this is just the projects that were approved in 2022. As you can see, Gauteng, in terms of embedded generation, is leading. But unfortunately, the focus is only solar. And if you look at all of this, even in terms of batteries, we are not investing in batteries. In fact, the challenge that we are facing in all of this is that for me, and I'm going to show you the reason why my concern is with this. But anyway, Gauteng is investing in this. If you can move on, please, for me. There is something called the California dark curve. The sun rises in the morning and it sets in the afternoon. What is emerging is we've got what we call this residual demand, which is this blue curve, the thick blue curve. As you can see, during the day around 12:01, we've got the most minimal amount of energy that is required by the system. The problem with that is that if we put more of the solars, we're going to have at some point negative energy that is required during the day. But that's not the problem. The problem is that as the sun sets around 3 o'clock, actually, not even as the sun sets, you get a very steep demand growth. How do you meet that? You can't meet that with the sun that is so, which is setting. Wind is unpredictable. How do you meet that? My last slide. The problem is if we don't do this, we're going to continue abusing Eskom plants. Because the way the system works is that if we don't come up with a proper diversified energy system that responds to the needs, you end up with, this is what they're doing with the new plants. By the way, this happens with all of the plants at Eskom. Every day they crank them up at some point and crank them down. If any of you runs a plant, your own plant, you don't treat a plant like that. Anyway, those are meant to be my introductory notes. I had a few questions. I'm not sure if we still have I had a few questions that I had for the panelists, but I think maybe I'll just ask them to actually have closing remarks. Thank you. If I can start with you, Sam.
Is this on? Yeah. Yeah, I agree with the chair. We need a diversified supply, and I agree with some of the other speakers that we should look at the kind of economy that we envisage for Gauteng, and that we should design our energy system based on that. I think the fortunate thing is that we have more options now. 20 years ago, solar and wind was expensive and perhaps unreliable because of the scale and so on. This gives us new options. Green hydrogen gives us new options. And I think as the colleague from CSIR, we didn't speak mainly about climate change, but our long-term problem is one of climate change. We don't want Gauteng to turn into a desert. And if you've seen some of the work that the NBI has done on climate change scenarios for South Africa, it's pretty scary. We are very vulnerable to climate change. So although the immediate crisis is an energy crisis, there's a longer-term crisis around climate change that we need to keep in mind. Thank you for the opportunity.
Moderator, I thought it was just the beginning. We're just introducing ourselves. So I would really urge us to give ourselves more time in the future, because 40 minutes for 5 people is really not enough. I think maybe just to end with some of the solutions, because you indicated that we are here for solutions. So the way we look at the solar industry in South Africa, solar PV industry, is that we segmented into 3 market segments: the household, the CNI. I think colleagues from the previous panel have already described what CNI is, and then of course the utility. So what I was doing in the previous slide is that, let's not complain, there is stuff that's been done, but I wasn't by any means giving solutions. There are things that the provincial government can do, and one of them has already been alluded to by the previous panel. If they can coordinate themselves a lot better, most of the work and the engagements between industry will be with municipalities. However, we know that some of the municipalities in our province need support. Not every municipality is a city of Johannesburg or a city of Tshwane. There is Sidibeng, there is West Rand. There is a need for capacitating the likes of the Energy Office so that they're able to support municipalities. There are various instruments, perhaps not time to divulge into those instruments. But I would like to end by saying that I hope that Premier, the province will not go and invest its resources to try and develop yet another strategy. We are strategy fatigued. No more policy, especially energy policy. The current energy strategy that the province has is comprehensive enough. Just go on and implement it. Secondly, the province has gone further to develop projects. Rushe talked about the projects that have been developed and almost ready for almost 10 years. What has happened to those projects? Yes, we have to have a long-term view of industrial development view. But unfortunately, today we need electricity. And that's a need that we have. So let's solve today's problems with a bigger vision in mind of what we want Gauteng to be like. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I think echo the sentiments that I think for this topic you need time. But just to give the context, I think some of the things we're doing with solar particularly, irrespective of the crisis, could have made sense. At the price of solar PV currently, any business that has got enough roof space, if you put solar on your roof, at the prices that we're at, you're going to make money. It's just what it is. It's got nothing to do with the crisis. It's how China, and we must say it clearly, how China used its industrial base to bring the cost of PV down. And part of it is using coal. Now, and that's just what we should do. But Mr. Premier, in terms of the solutions, you see, I saw that part of your outcome is to get off or minimize your supply from the grid. Let me say this, and I think for the national leaders here, 80 to 90% of our current problem is solving the central system. We cannot get away from that technically. We need to make sure that we've got a secure grid. Currently, it's mostly ESCOM. The rest, as I've indicated, we should have done them anyway because they make sense, right? But they are not going to solve the national problem. Right? And in fact, you don't develop by disintegrating the grid. All developed countries strengthen and integrate the grid. In Europe, the grid is much more integrated. They are doing more work to integrate, not to disintegrate. So when Cape Town and Western Cape and Gauteng say we want to move away from the grid and we'll get energy security, it's going to be very expensive to do that. And is not going to lead to development because energy as a support for development has to be cheap and abundant. And for that, you need central grid. That is an established fact across the world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe in closing, I think for the future, we do have enough pipelines that are going through in Gauteng in terms of trying to do a gas generation. Even though one can say it's not as clean as solar, but we do need a base load for us to be able to grow the economy and be sustainable. And with that being said, I agree that there's many municipalities which are not capable of maybe executing whatever that they want to execute. So we really need an interconnected grid for Gauteng so that the municipalities can then be able to help each other in terms of energy supply and security. But in saying so, we also need the provincial government to try and take out and talk to the national one and at least try and move some red tapes. You know, there's a lot of red tapes for IPPs to be able to, or for municipalities to even be able to onboard IPPs for future energy security. Thanks.
Thank you. Premier, I know we failed you. You asked us the question that says, what are the technologies that we could come up with for Gauteng? We did not respond to that. And I think you've had the panel perhaps that says, perhaps that might be the wrong question. The wrong question is industrially, where do we want to go? What is our next goal? Premier, the next goal is honestly not going to be making energy because energy is a means to an end. We need to know which end you're hunting. And that energy that we produce must support that end. We had always, Premier, had the ESCOM as as the chief buyer of electricity. The RIP program was only successful, well, other things considered, was only successful because ESCOM signed those we need those counterparties. Now it's moving to municipalities. Now those municipalities have got to be ready. Those counterparties have got to be ready. But I still say the best counterparty are the consumers out there. You need to get the Anglo-Americans to be able to buy that power. But you need diversity. We're going to, and if we don't have a portfolio approach, we will fail worse than we failed with just coal. We need to be able to diversify. And just my closing things, we need gas. We need to make it bankable. And the challenge to the bankers is not to say, bring a bankable project. The challenge to the bankers, make it bankable, please.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to our panelists giving us varying insight. And as Mr. Kumete has highlighted, it's varying themes that we need to discuss. And of course, in as much as we might feel challenged and conflicted as to whether or not we've responded to the Premier's answer, this is the starting block for us to actually find those answers. So we will continue to build up on them. As they make their way off stage, ladies and gentlemen, please give them a round of applause once more for the contribution they've made. Fantastic. Thank you kindly. Well, we are headed to the last session for today. I'm hoping that many of you are still feeling comfortable and okay. After this, we will break for lunch, and of course, there will be a networking opportunity. I'm tempted to say you can stand up and stretch, but I also know that that could end in alternative means. So for those who are making their way out of the room, ladies and gentlemen, we'll give you at least a minute or two to do so, just in case there are any individuals who do want to leave or vacate the vicinity. Please do so speedily, but we do want you to stay for the final session because there's a final panel discussion that we're going to host looking at the sustainability of electricity generation for municipalities. And this essentially is where the techie hits the ground. Understanding the implementation on the ground for different municipalities and of course the impact on households and business. So we'll give you about a minute or two. I'll introduce our speakers and I'll get into introducing our panelists who will join us for the next moment, ladies and gentlemen. There also appears to be an announcement. Someone who's driving a Mazda Toyota Corolla with the registration that is listed on screen, please move your car. You are currently parked on the grass parking. So that's an announcement that we have. All right, as many of you do make your way out and some of you continue to stay, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce the next panel discussion, again focused on sustainability of electricity supply for municipalities. You are strongly encouraged to stay behind for this conversation as we're building up on key themes that were discussed earlier this morning. Maybe that will help. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce the next speaker, and the moderator is Mr. Nhlanhla Ngidi, who's an energy specialist at the South African Local Government Association. He'll be joined by panelists who'll be giving us some insight into driving sustainability at a local government level. Now, this next speaker will be Mr. Merik Ramatlo, who joins us as an executive for energy management at City Power. We have Masego Makutulele, who's a revenue enhancement specialist at Komuyane Consulting, Mr. Thembisa Bukula, who's the CEO of PowerX and IPP, and will also be joined by the CEO of City Power, Ms. Chifilaro Mashao, who will also join us in this presentation to share some insight on the concerns that we do see from a local government point of view. I'm not too sure if we're missing any of our guests, but we will continue, of course, with the moderator setting the theme and the tone, and then building up from the conversations from there. Anyone who is still present, we'd appreciate it if you could please settle down, ladies and gentlemen. This session will run for at least the next 30 to 35 minutes, but by 1 o'clock, we will be done with today's program to ensure that you have enough time to network. So I will ensure that we have all our speakers and our panelists who have joined us. The moderators, Mr. Nhlanhla Ngidi, energy specialist from Salga, Merik Ramatlo, Executive for Energy Management at City Power, Ms. Masego Makutulela, who's a Revenue Enhancement Specialist at Komuyane Consulting, Mr. Thembani Bukula, who joins us from PowerX, and Ms. Chifilaro Mashao, who is the CEO of City Power, joining us on this panel. As some of our guests might still make their way through, we will be accommodating them on stage and, of course, having them join us shortly. Okay. I think let's take it back to the registration. One more announcement, not only is the vehicle missing, but of course there's a lost cell phone. For any of you who might happen to lose any of your possessions, please bear in mind that we will leave them back at the registration table. At the initial registration table where you came in, cell phone, IDs, loved ones, you'll find them at registration if you happen to misplace them. So we'll shift clearly into gear with our next two speakers, two of whom are missing for the moment. The CEO is still doing an interview. Perfect. What we'll do is we'll do our best to commence at least just by setting the scene for this conversation. As the guests do come in, we will accommodate them on the panel just to ensure that we don't run out of time and of course try to extract as much value out of this conversation as possible. We're comfortable? You comfortable and ready? Hot fire questions that we're going to share? Ah, the energy is dissipating. This is when the clouds come over the solar PV panels. Perfect. We'll give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves just to set the tone and the context of the conversations that they'll be participating in. Mr. Ngiti, you comfortable, sir? Perfect. Awesome. I think what we'll do is just offer all three of you an opportunity to set the scene, set the context of the organizations you work with, and of course how that plays a critical role in ensuring the sustainable supply of electricity within.
Education is the key to success, and that key needs to be obtained. But there are certain aspects that need to be fulfilled in order for the students to excel in their academics. Food, clothes, and books are one of the most important essentials that are going to lead to a fruitful and successful educational life.